the legendary Hollywood director. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 551 Dead Silence. Please subscribe and vote. The subtitle slowly rose, and the screening room was no longer quiet. In fact, when the plot of Dead Silence reached the middle and later stages, the executives of the theater chain were thinking about how many screens to give and how to schedule the film. After the film was finished, these people did not shy away from Lyman, James Wan and others, and discussed it directly on the spot. After all, the crew signed a completion guarantee at the beginning, and it had to be released no matter what. Even if the quality of the film was very poor, it had to be shown in North American theaters. Not to mention that Dead Silence was a potentially very good movie. What does it mean to be potentially very good? The president of AMC Cinemas Los Angeles, who was sitting behind Lyman, said, "This film is not a problem for fans who can accept horror element, but ordinary fans probably can't accept it. The scale of the shots is too scary." Compared with Saw, Dead Silence has at least risen a level in terms of excitement. After all, the latter is people, execution and killing, and Jigsaw is just torture with revenge. The former is ghosts, revenge, and Mary Shaw is like a shadow watching in the dark night. In terms of the level of fright, of course the former wins. Can ghosts and people be compared? Not to mention that the killing methods of Mary Shaw are very cruel, and they are often carried out in the dark, which increases the sense of fear. After the lights came on, a group of people praised James Wan. "James Wan, the movie you made is great. I think the fright atmosphere in it is more full and exciting than Saw. Yes, the plot is good, and the characters are all established. It's a good work of the genre. We will definitely support it at Emperor Cinema." James Wan was very happy to be recognized. He kept nodding and responded, thank you everyone." At this time, it was Liam's turn to appear. He took a group of people to the compartment to discuss the screening matters. Although the cinema executives here expressed their approval of the film at the first time, it was more of a courtesy and a formality. When it comes to the question of how much resources to allocate, most people are very rational, because they are sure that horror movies are a niche market. No matter how well you make them, many audiences will not watch them. In addition, the MPAA censorship agency rated the movie R-rated. Under this restriction, the underage market is almost gone. Of course, as a horror film, Dead Silence has some highlights, and it must be in line with the tastes of some horror fans. Moreover, even Japanese horror films such as Midnight Ring and The Grudge can sell well in Hollywood, and even refilmed American versions can still make money. I don't believe that pure American films like Dead Silence are completely unpopular with the audience. But the theaters can't give too much resources. After a compromise, the amount of the first week of opening is determined. How the film performs, whether it will continue to be promoted or withdrawn, all depends on the box office, attendance rate and decline after the release, which will show the specific market fluctuation arrangements. If the situation is good, no one will go against the interests of the theaters. In this way, with your 100 screens and my 200 screens, we can basically cover all the states and towns. After several releases, Blue Butterfly Pictures is very familiar with this kind of theater negotiations. Moreover, the September schedule is not a golden schedule, and the audience base itself is just like that, so there are no special blockbusters competing. The entire September source arrangement includes The Exorcist, which was released the day before yesterday, which was released by Screen Treasures, and the production capital is all overseas. There is also an animated film, Corpse Bride, released by Warner. On the 23rd, there will be a Sky Crisis produced by Touchstone Pictures. As for other small independent films, there is basically no threat. It can be said that Dead Silence, which was released in mid-September, actually only needs to compete with these 2 or 3 companies for box office and seize the market. Among them, Corpse Bride is an animation, and the market overlap is not high. Sky Crisis takes the suspense route, but the location of the case has changed from the ground to the plane, which is somewhat competitive, but the only one that can really collide with Dead Silence head-on is Exorcism. After all, both the horror themes and the market audiences are overlapping. So, it goes without saying that the box office split between the two sides must be very serious. It depends on whether Dead Silence can suppress exorcism. After the initial negotiation, the theater executives left quickly. After a while, Lyman, who sent the group away, turned back and found Lyman. "How is it?" Lyman asked. After their discussion, the opening scale of Dead Silence should not be less than 1,600 screens, and the division of the scheduling time is also reasonable. Well, as soon as possible, build momentum and publicize the film's launch and the upcoming screening in the theater. Don't worry, I have already given the order. Just when Lyman was thinking about the release of Dead Silence, the biggest competitor Exorcism had been screened for 3 days. This movie, adapted from real events, and telling the story of evil spirits, performed quite well in the box office market. As a B-level low-cost investment film with no star actors, no big director, and no gold medal producer, it only cost $20 million to produce, and less than $5 million in pre-promotion. It won $9.75 million on the first day of its release. After 3 days, the total accumulated $30.05 million, and won the weekly box office championship in the first weekend. It has to be said that, although the actors in it are not famous, their acting skills are very good. At least they don't look stiff or out of the play. Considering that the pre-promotion resources invested by Mubeo Pictures are not much, the box office is not small, and it is still growing. In the second week, Mubeo quickly responded to increase resource investment. However, the single-day closing of The Exorcist on Monday was only $5.75 million, a drop of more than half, but because it was a weekday, it was hard to see anything. Maybe there is still a turnaround. At worst, the movie box office has recovered. With this in mind, Screen Treasures continued to invest resources until September 15th, when the total North American box office of the film had reached more than $48.7 million. Just when Screen Treasures felt quite satisfied, on September 16th, Friday, James Wan's second work, Dead Silence, which was not produced, but was nominally directed, was finally officially released. The theater chain knew that James Wan's previous directorial performance was quite good, and he had accumulated a certain fan base, so 1,645 screens were arranged to support it, which was already the best in this time period. Of course, The Exorcist released at the same time also had nearly 1,700 screens. After all, it had proved its potential, and was a box office hit. As a not-so-hot schedule, no one could have dominated it. But for Firefly Pictures and Blue Butterfly Pictures, even if they couldn't dominate it, they had to at least surpass The Exorcist, otherwise they wouldn't have to rush to this schedule. Is it not released at this time because the competitors are not strong enough? Of course, all this depends on the results. Chapter 552, Fear. Please subscribe and vote. Hollywood, near the Avenue of Stars, Queens Theater. It was around 8 p.m. Tom and his girlfriend Peggy had dinner, went shopping, bought some things, and then hurried to the cinema. Because Tom had made preparations in advance and knew the schedule of this cinema, he just happened to catch the screening of Dead Silence in the #1 theater as soon as he entered. Tom's girlfriend Peggy is a slightly fat, well-proportioned white girl who seems quite cheerful. But when she heard Tom say that he wanted to watch Dead Silence, Peggy saw the weird puppets on the movie poster, which said horror themes, and quickly said, "I don't like this kind of movie. It's scary to watch." "Don't worry, I'm with you." Tom said so, but he was thinking in his heart, if you're not scared, I'd have wasted my efforts. You know, Dead Silence is definitely not a movie suitable for couples to watch, which can be seen from the poster and the type of movie. But there is always a reason for choosing this way. Peggy is not completely unaware of what her boyfriend wants to do. Men, they understand everything they can. As for me, I have a certain affection for him. Although I really don't like watching horror movies in my heart, I didn't refuse in the end. The two of them found a corner seat in the last 2 rows of the theater and sat down. Looking at the increasing number of audiences, Tom suddenly didn't want so many people. Oh, I should have come later, Tom thought. But now that I'm here, after waiting patiently for a while, the lights in the theater slowly dimmed. Tom sat quietly, and the sound of eating popcorn was in his ears. His girlfriend also held a bucket and ate. After the routine label, the blue butterfly animation of Firefly disappeared. A line of big words appeared on the big screen. This film is large in scale and contains bloody scenes. Viewers with heart diseases should not watch it. The surroundings were buzzing with noise, and most of the noise was made by some couples. The reason for the booing was naturally this warning. Could it be really scary? Peggy couldn't help thinking, and she didn't dare to look at the content on the screen, but she was curious and watched secretly, watching for a while, closing her eyes, and then watching for a while, playing a self-deception. But most of the audience was very interested in this film. Some of them were die-hard horror fans. The more you said it was scary, the more they expected it. The excitement was overflowing in their hearts, and the quality of the film did not disappoint. The movie started with a scene of torture. The protagonists Jamie and Lisa were a newlywed couple. After a few shots of the sex scene, there was a knock at the door. Jamie opened the door and saw only a package sent, but no one was there. The two opened the package and found a very realistic puppet inside, but the facial features were very strange and the smile was scary. But Lisa was not afraid. She picked up the puppet and played with it for a while, saying that there was a fable circulating in their hometown that said that screaming at night would lead to a tragic death. She said it in a joking tone, and her husband Jamie also echoed a few jokes. Then, someone called and Jamie went out. It was almost evening and darkness enveloped the world. In front of the mirror, Lisa was imagining herself as a mother, imitating the posture of a pregnant woman. Suddenly, a cold and strange background music sounded, and the lights in the bedroom suddenly went out. Lisa shouted Jamie's name a few times, sat on the bed, tilted her head, and somehow met the eyes of the puppet. Lisa's heart was beating, and she was a little scared. It was as if the puppet not far away came alive, and was also looking at her. She just felt such a gaze of being carefully scrutinized. Then, the puppet's eyes moved. After a few miserable screams, Lisa pinched her neck with her left hand, but her right hand reached into her mouth and pulled. Blood, a lot of blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Lisa twitched unconsciously for a few times, her eyes widened, and then she didn't move anymore. The puppet next to her just pulled out a very scary smile, and watched everything silently. Then when Jamie came back, he saw Lisa lying on the blood-stained bed. In the shaking picture, the camera had already arrived at the police station. One of the policemen said to Jamie that they didn't find other traces and clues from the scene, so they initially determined that Lisa committed suicide. Jamie certainly didn't think his wife would commit suicide. Watching the warm-toned daytime shots, Peggy was thinking back to the death in the opening scene. This was a brilliant suspense design. With just this point, the audience was drawn into the story and their curiosity was aroused. Who killed Lisa? A puppet? In the next 20 minutes, Jamie went through many twists and turns, constantly trying to find out the real cause of his wife's death. Finally, he found an old man through the address on the package. This man was a survivor of the Fairtown tragedy 20 years ago. Jamie came to his house and suddenly became terrified when he heard what he said about his wife's death. The old man murmured, "It's been 20 years. You've killed so many people, and you haven't let it go? Even their descendants are not spared." Mary, the supporting role Johnny, played by Bob Wahlberg, began to recall that dusty memory. That is, the place where Lisa's parents' ancestors once lived, Fairtown. In the calm words, he took the audience to witness the mystery of the tragic death, that is, the origin of the fable. Gradually, the audience's hearts also became uneasy. After all, the previous plot is just an appetizer. Once Mary Shaw appears, the realistic and bloody scene will truly challenge the audience's psychological endurance. A ghost with hatred, a woman with loose hair and all white pupils. Curse Billy, just imagine Churin May's style. The similarity is more than 80%. This kind of ghost demanding scene may be a piece of cake for audiences who are used to watching Japanese horror movies such as The Grudge and The Ring, but it has an extremely strong impact on ordinary American audiences. In particular, the entire town has a population of more than 300, and only a dozen people were left after Mary Shaw killed them. The various methods used in this, drowning in the bath, pulling out the tongue and hanging, possessing, and killing, banging the head against the door, jumping off the building, cutting wrists, etc. The people in the scene are all tongueless. The mouth is open, empty, full of torture. Finally, some audience is left in a hurry. I don't want to watch it anymore. Let's go quickly. Poor Peggy was terrified. She kept urging him to leave, but her legs were numb and soft. As for Tom, he was so shocked by the scale and the intuitive camera expression that his heart was pounding and his throat was dry and astringent. He finally managed to force his smile to comfort his girlfriend, but he couldn't say don't be afraid, I'm here. American horror blood thriller films are so popular with American horror fans when they meet a freak director like James Wan, who has created a unique atmosphere after the intersection of Eastern and Western cultures. Now, the charm of the film is less than halfway revealed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 553 Procedural Justice, Subscriptions, Votes. Pete, do you think Mary Shaw will really die? Of course, if not, how can we highlight Jamie as the protagonist? You see, this is a movie, and in the end, the villain is always subdued by the protagonist. But I don't think she is that bad, the companion said casually. On the big screen. After the movie revealed the curse of the fable, following Johnny's memories, the audience also knew why Mary Shaw chose to commit suicide, and why she cursed the residents of Fairtown. She was actually just a poor person. A middle-aged person, without a husband or children, living alone, and the only companions for her were those lifelike puppets. Although her life was dull and even lonely, it did not affect her enthusiasm for work. She always had a smile on her face, and brought joy to the children with her puppet performances. The children in the town liked her very much, or more precisely, they liked the lifelike puppet performances. They always pestered Mary, and went to her house to play with puppets. But one day, a little girl named Blair drowned in a pond in the town. A few days later, Mary went to the girl's funeral. Blair often went to play with her, and Mary was deeply impressed by her, and felt very heavy. But after the funeral, rumors suddenly spread in the town that Blair's death was not an accident, but a murder. This was the reasoning made by John, the principal of the town's elementary school. One day after school, the principal saw Bernie did not go back, and hid in the classroom in a depressed mood. The principal wanted to cheer the little boy up with nursery rhymes, and then send him home, but he heard Bernie suddenly say that he hated Mary Shaw. The principal asked the reason, and Bernie shouted. Mary refused to give the puppet toy, and also made Blair cry. The principal felt something was wrong and asked, "Did you see Blair a few days ago?" Bernie hesitated and said, "I went to Mary's house with her." The principal suddenly stopped laughing, and was very serious. But what the little boy did not say was that he and Blair played that day, and Blair fell into the water. Bernie was very young and ignorant, and could not understand what death was. He was just simply afraid, so he concealed a little. After that, Mary Shaw's life changed. First, the police came to investigate Blair's death. At first, they determined it was an accident. After Dean John provided clues, Mary Shaw became a suspect. But Mary did not kill Blair, so the police investigation yielded nothing, and Mary was released. Confused, Mary returned home, only to find that her home was in a mess, as if it had been robbed. Then, Blair's parents came over. Blair's father beat Mary without saying a word, while Blair's mother kept crying, and claimed that Mary had killed her daughter. If the police hadn't stopped them, perhaps Mary would have been beaten into the hospital by Blair's father. As for the reason for their anger, it was of course because of Bernie. He is now the only eyewitness, and the dean even invited a psychologist to talk to Bernie, trying to find out the details of Mary's murder of Blair. But Bernie didn't understand anything at all, and he couldn't even remember what happened that day. But the psychologist believed that Bernie was stimulated and was unwilling to recall the details because of the stress reaction, so he needed guidance. During the conversation, the psychologist tried to talk a lot about pushing Blair into the pond from Mary's perspective. However, for Bernie, he was tired of being asked questions over and over again. He just wanted no one to ask him questions, so he nodded and followed the psychologist's guidance to answer. I was standing far away, and I saw Mary and Blair walking together. I hate Mary Shaw. She is scary when she is angry. Later, the dean told Blair's parents the whole story and said that Berner's testimony alone could not convict Mary of the crime she committed, and she was likely to be acquitted. Then, Mary came back from the police station and was blocked by Blair's angry parents. Mary, who felt greatly wronged, ran to Berner's house with injuries to argue, but Berner's parents did not want to talk to her because in their concept, their children were ignorant and could not lie. Mary said angrily, "Then don't talk nonsense and stay away from my puppet and my family." Berner's mother was very excited. "What about Blair? She is so cute and innocent. How could you do that? You will definitely get retribution and will be arrested and shot." Mary screamed in pain. I didn't go out that day. Blair went back by herself." Berner's parents didn't believe it and still cursed Mary. In order to resolve the misunderstanding, she went to Blair's house again. Mary hoped to sit down and talk and make everything clear. But Blair's parents, who had just lost their daughter, couldn't control their anger at all. They deeply believed that it was Mary who killed their daughter, and what they had to do was to pay blood debt with blood. Blair's father took out a shotgun and wanted to shoot Mary, but was stopped by his wife crying. Later, the police summoned Mary many times, but there was still no evidence to prove that Blair's death was not an accident. Then, Mary's life was ruined. More and more residents of the town believed that Mary was the murderer. They threw stones and animal carcasses at her house. When they went to the supermarket, the salesperson refused to sell her things. The disgust of the people around her was so deep. Mary was walking on the road and was thrown a stone by someone again. Her head was bleeding, but she was indifferent. She came to Berner's house for the last time and asked hoarsely, "Did you see that I pushed Blair down? Why did you lie?" The little boy hid in his mother's arms in fear and said nothing. Everyone stood on the commanding heights and in the sunshine. When they saw someone fall into darkness and could not be punished by the law, they called themselves messengers of justice. They succeeded. On a dark night, Mary committed suicide and left a curse. The old man finished speaking. His expression was a little stiff. Jamie followed Johnny's line of sight and saw Mary Shaw. She had a scary smile like the puppet Billy, black, and she had no tongue. Jamie was very scared. After a while, Mary disappeared again, as if everything just now was an illusion. But how could it be an illusion? The next day, Johnny died. When he died, his eyes were wide open and his tongue was also missing. He committed suicide by shooting himself, and blood splattered on the wall behind him. On the third day, Jamie went to the dilapidated and deserted town of Fair. He found the house where Mary died. It was actually quite easy to find, as the windows of her house had been smashed by stones. Jamie looked around the house and found a notebook with several diaries written by Mary. There was resentment and hatred between the lines. Finally, Jamie put the puppet Billy back where it should be. In the fast and slow shots, Mary's ghost was watching all this not far away. Chapter 554. Polarization. Please subscribe and vote. The scale of dead silence is indeed very large. Many scary scenes were not cut, and there were too many murders, and the murder methods were horrible and bizarre, which was enough to make the audience with low psychological acceptance flee. At the end of the movie, the audience in the theater only accounted for 40% of the total number of seats, and almost half of the people left early, and most of them were couples. Think about it. If you want to find excitement, you don't have to take your girlfriend to watch this kind of work, or it's too exciting, and it's hard to stick to it. Midwest of the United States. Maywood, a city under Chicago. It was almost 9:30 in the evening, and Bella, who had to prepare a column article, was quite busy recently. However, she still took time to watch the new work Dead Silence released by Firefly Pictures. As a film critic, she should have watched the whole movie with a professional and responsible attitude, but unfortunately, she didn't do it. After the movie was more than halfway through, she fled with the crowd leaving, and for a while she didn't know how to evaluate this work. Is this a good movie? Maybe, but Bella herself doesn't like this kind of subject matter. Compared with The Saw, which is restrained, with a surprise reversal at the end, and a little brain-burning reasoning clues that make people shine. Dead Silence is undoubtedly much simpler in structure. Except for Mary Shaw's portrayal of nightmares at night, Bella is unwilling to recall any details of the film. But is it a bad movie? Not really. Although many people left, those who did not leave watched it with relish. Their expressions were focused, and their eyes never left the screen. There is no doubt that Dead Silence has a deep appeal to some audience groups. The plot of the film is relatively complete, one ring after another. First, Lisa's tragic death leads to the puppet Billy, and then the puppet delivery address leads to Johnny telling the cursed town affair, and then Mary Shaw's full hatred leads to the injustice she suffered. Finally, the ending sets the stage. In short, Dead Silence is more extreme than Saw, and less friendly to ordinary passers-by. The intuitive lens expression in it is probably difficult for those who don't like horror themes to accept. Of course, this is all from a relatively objective standpoint. Those who like to watch it may praise it very much, but for Bella personally, I basically don't want to watch it a second time, nor do I want to reminisce. Maybe. Director James Wan is determined to take this path of in-depth portrayal of the atmosphere, and does not deliberately reduce some overly scary scenes and blurred lenses. Bella was thinking about this, and the movie seemed to be over, and a large group of audiences walked out of the cinema. This movie is really cool and exciting. I'm going to bring Will to watch it tomorrow, to let him know what a horror movie is. At the end, why did Jamie put the puppet back to Mary's house? Who knows? Anyway, Mary's soul has not dissipated. Why didn't Mary kill Jamie? That's simple. Jamie is not cursed. His parents are not residents of Fairtown. Haha, those who use their mouths and words to force Mary to death will have no tongue when they die. The design of this plot is really interesting. TSK, James Wan is really a genius. Now I have decided that I will watch every horror movie of his in the future. Listening to these people dancing and talking to each other, excitedly discussing the plot, Bella clearly felt that something seemed to flash through her mind, but she couldn't catch it. Unconsciously, Bella returned to the rented apartment. She thought that this movie might be made for those who like to watch it, and it does not try to please passers-by fans, or even take the initiative to create a gap. In this way, perhaps the voice of criticism can be much weaker. So, she opened the computer document and wrote, just as the warning at the beginning of the film, people with weak hearts should not watch Dead Silence. The weird and realistic puppet Billy and the elusive Mary Shaw will become nightmares for many people this September. Yes, nightmare. Just as the image symbols such as Churinmedi and Sadako have become some kind of valves in the depths of memory, the excellence of Dead Silence also successfully shaped Mary Shaw. At night, when you sleep alone in bed, you always feel that someone is secretly watching you. This is a similar psychological suggestion nightmare. And with the first day of the release of Dead Silence, various film reviews of the film began to appear on various media platforms on a large scale. The movie received a score of 7.4 on IMDb at this time, of which more than 3 points were less than 5 points, and more than 2 points were given 9 points, which is considered to be a serious polarization of reviews. Rotten Tomatoes gave Dead Silence 89% freshness, and the film review score was not as good as IMDb, maintaining it around 7.1 points. As for the film critic group, most of them also sang badly about Dead Silence. James Wan used blood and violence to make a meaningless movie. Entertainment Weekly: no one can appreciate this combination of boring clips and boring performances. San Francisco Metropolis Daily: perhaps director James Wan has not learned his lesson from the increasingly unpopular market of Saw. Instead, he added naked and intuitive shots and unabashedly promoted horror. The New York Observer: of course, some people dislike it, and some people like it. Compared to other films that depict horror with large quantities of inferior blood plasma, Dead Silence stands out. For a horror movie, isn't it the best compliment to say that it's scary enough? Los Angeles Times: from this film, we can see that director James Wan has a very good level of creating a horror atmosphere. Whether it's the sound effects or the appropriate close-up shots, they seem to be leading the audience to be there in person. In The Invisible Place, there is also a pair of stiff pupils staring intently. Just thinking about it is enough to make people sweat. Chicago Evening News: a work that best explains the uncanny valley effect. It is worth recommending. The theme is revenge. After watching it, you will feel refreshed. Hollywood variety. Even in this mixed evaluation, James Wan and Leigh Whannell, as the parties involved, are not at ease. Although the Saw series is a small gold mine, it has brought them a lot of income. In the past 2 years, they have roughly earned more than $30 million US. But it is not easy to survive in the luxurious Hollywood with its banquets, cocktail parties, luxury houses and other lifestyles. Therefore, the box office performance of Dead Silence is still very important for their future Hollywood career development, and there are not many chances of failure. Moreover, James Wan's studio has invested money in it, and he does not want the movie to not recoup its costs. Chapter 555 Catalysis, Subscriptions, Votes. Soon, a day passed. In the early morning of the 17th, the midnight box office of Dead Silence was released. Lyman also insisted on knowing the box office information before he could sleep peacefully. The midnight box office was $5.57 million. This is the result given by Dead Silence. If compared with ordinary blockbusters, it is not much, but if only horror-themed works are compared, Dead Silence broke the midnight box office record of $5.21 million US set by The Island. If we continue to compare, the audience reputation of Dead Silence is very different, which seems to be unfavorable for the subsequent market operation. But in fact, this film is a rare masterpiece in the eyes of horror fans. As a result, it even set off a wave of discussion on the internet. On the second day, Lyman rushed to Blue Butterfly Pictures to hold a small meeting with Lyman and others. After learning about the midnight box office, James Wan breathed a sigh of relief and thought that the prospects were good and the investment money could at least make a profit. But for Lyman and others, the polarization of the film's reputation, without publicity and guidance, is likely to destroy the current momentum of the screening, but it must be prevented. Although the competition for the September schedule is not very fierce, there are still competitors. If Screen Treasures has such an opportunity to attack Dead Silence, it will surely not be unwilling to add fuel to the flames. Perhaps, we can increase the investment in print media and let those film critics try to hold positive opinions to suppress those negative comments, a senior executive of the publicity department suggested in the conference room. Lyman shook his head. We lack the means in this regard. Those newspapers like to hype topics and gain circulation. How can they be easily bought? This is something that the 6 majors can't do, so how can we do it? Moreover, those film critics have a bad temper and may not be able to be brought in. If some people just don't like Dead Silence, can they all be won over? How much will it cost? Now, the most important thing is to guide the audience. We can't let such boring and vulgar arguments continue to ferment. Another person said, "It's easy to say, but it's not easy to do. Do you think there is a movie in the world that everyone likes? It's hard to get market recognition for the top 10 movies on IMDb, not to mention that Dead Silence is really exciting. It's normal for some people not to like it. As long as we capture the audience that likes it, profit should not be a problem." While a group of executives were discussing publicity and guidance with Lyman listened quietly while reading a newspaper. There was a news article about Dead Silence. The criticism was still that director James Wan deliberately showed off his sense of camera, and some scenes were too intuitive and unacceptable. Then another adult man was frightened in the middle of watching the movie and was sent to the hospital. It was because his heart beat too fast and his breathing was short of breath. After watching the horror movie, he was so excited that he went into shock. Everyone, I think, instead of spending a lot of money and not necessarily eliminating the unfavorable comments in the media, it is better to focus on publicity resources and promote the strengths of the film. After saying that, Lyman deliberately handed the news he had just seen to everyone to see clearly. Isn't it a kind of boasting that horror works are scary enough? Anyway, people who don't like to watch ghost movies will not go to the cinema to watch them, no matter how good they are. We seize this point and try to attract the corresponding audience groups and make them curious. The title is published to the public, saying that fans with weak hearts are not allowed to watch Dead Silence and we are not responsible for any consequences. Actually, it is really a big deal to figure out people's hearts. Since the premiere of Dead Silence, some relatively fierce film critics even called on the MPAA not to give the film an R rating, but to give it NC-17, or to be more intense and ban it from being shown. But no matter what the outside evaluation is, Blue Butterfly Pictures has immediately admitted its mistake through the fact that several people fainted after watching Dead Silence, and once again emphasized that viewers with hidden heart diseases should not take risks. Once this scare people to death gimmick came out, some viewers wanted to try Dead Silence to see if it was really that scary. Some psychological freaks who love to watch such exciting movies feel that they can't miss it. The more exciting it is, the more they praise it. Otherwise, there won't be frequent rankings of the scariest horror movies and arguments in the future. This kind of thing is all about heartbeats. Therefore, the multiple emphasis of Blue Butterfly Pictures and the strong opposition of film critics have aroused the rebellious psychology and curiosity of the audience and fans. Everyone says that this movie is scary, so how scary is it? Especially this movie is also directed by James Wan and produced by Lyman. Although the box office performance of the Saw series is worse than the previous one, it still has an influence on the audience. People, sometimes they are quite cheap in their hearts. The Ring was really scary at the beginning, but it didn't affect the momentum of the movie. Now Dead Silence only scared many audiences to leave the theater during the screening, and those with weak hearts were shocked. The audience went to the theater to see it. Even some horror enthusiasts who heard about the great reputation of Mary Sure on the internet or from relatives and friends can't wait to watch it 2 or 3 times to satisfy their spiritual pleasure. Of course, this made Screen Treasures very confused. They did use some tricks when Dead Silence premiered, which was nothing more than spending some money to bribe film critics to throw some dirty water on the rivals to increase the adverse impact. Who knew that Blue Butterfly Pictures did not refuse at all and seized the fact that the film was indeed scary, vulgar and without connotation, and admitted it all at once, which made Screen Treasures feel that they were helping to take advantage of the momentum and increase the momentum of Dead Silence. Regret is impossible. Throwing dirty water, who hasn't done it? The more intense the competition, the more despicable the means. But then, the market for Exorcist slumped. In addition to the new release of Dead Silence, which plundered the audience market, there were also 2 horror films that were compared with each other. It turned out that the quality of Exorcist was also good and exciting to watch, but now compared with Dead Silence, which is better, naturally, the audience gave their own choice. The 17th was just over, and various box office data about the North American box office market on that day came out. Among them, Exorcist won $4.25 million, and the daily box office fell by 32% year on year. Corpse Bride won $6.24 million, an increase of 7% year on year. As for Dead Silence, with more than 1,600 screens and the largest share of screenings, it lived up to expectations and won the daily box office championship, landing directly. Results: $17.25 million US dollars. The fact that a single theater can exceed $10,000 US dollars is also the basic performance of a hit. Chapter 556 Low Cost Subscriptions Tickets. After attending the meeting and formulating the next step of publicity and promotion work, Lyman returned to Firefly Pictures. Nowadays, the sequel of Prison Break has also begun to be broadcast on TV. Compared with the first part, after accumulating some audience base, and the plot of this drama has not collapsed, the story outline has been improved, so the ratings can basically be stabilized at around 5.4 per episode. When encountering a small climax of the plot, breaking 7 is also common, and occasionally it can touch the threshold of 8. In this part, Michael successfully used Prison Break as a common goal in Fox River Prison to win over a team. Although several people in it have their own calculations, and even the relationship between them is not very good, it is really plastic. But after stumbling, Michael quickly found a way to escape and rescue his brother after gaining the trust of the warden. Of course, the production cost of this drama has increased a lot compared to the previous one. After all, after the drama became popular, the salaries of the leading actors have increased. However, this has little to do with Firefly Pictures. They never thought about making a profit from this project. The advertising revenue and the money from purchasing the broadcasting rights were basically divided among the several signed partners. Alas, speaking of it, we are still operating in debt. Perhaps we have to wait for the profit of Dead Silence and the payment of Batman Begins to be divided and returned before we can get rid of this situation. But to be honest, without the introduction of investment banks such as Wall Street, the security of the capital chain is really insufficient. Lyman understands why Spielberg had to win over two allies before he dared to establish DreamWorks. Even though the studio's profits are high, the profit model is really tight. It is no wonder that some second-tier studios will go bankrupt and dissolve and be acquired because of the failure of a blockbuster investment. It is really easy to lose control of the company if external funds are introduced. Once the situation is not good, the internal surrender first, but if external funds are not introduced, the development is too slow, and it is often operated in debt. If you are not careful, it is easy to collapse. After all the calculations, both methods have their difficulties. Even until now, Firefly Pictures has fewer production projects a year than New Line and Lionsgate, not to mention that compared with the Big Six, internal resources are even more scarce, but the advantage is that it is very solid and takes one step at a time. Once the debts owed to the bank in France are paid off, we can take a big step again. Or acquiring another company to supplement the industrial chain, or improving publicity channels, and seeing if we can make an early overseas layout like Lionsgate, are all the next operational priorities. Of course, all of these require Dead Silence to be powerful enough, otherwise the profit of the Mystery of the Sword and the Shadow will not be able to pay off the debt, unless the company's daily operating expenses are deducted, and the big money eater in the digital field stops funding to continue to build a public relations technology barrier. But think about it, it's impossible to do this. After Lemon returned home, took a shower, read the newspaper, and it was about 4:45 in the morning. Turning on the computer, an email came in the mailbox. After reading it in detail, Lemon couldn't help but smile. You know, the production cost of Dead Silence is only more than $20 million US. If you take into account the publicity and promotion, Blue Butterfly Pictures may have a little waste due to its lack of foundation. It is less than $31 million. However, the first day plus the midnight show has a total of $22.82 million, and the market potential is still quite sufficient. Of course, the original Dead Silence was criticized for its plot, and the total box office in North America and overseas was more than $56.7 million. Even if the box office is slightly lost, the cost can still be recovered in the long run. However, relying on long-term operation to recover the cost is basically exchanging time for funds. For most studios, it is definitely not acceptable. Just like the box office failure of Sahara Raiders, if the copyright is operated for more than 10 years, the loss will be reduced a lot. But who can accept that the project that was originally planned to make a profit has become like that? Not only did it not make much money, but it also had to slowly recover the cost, up and down, and a lot of profit space was lost. With the box office performance of $17.25 million on the first day of Dead Silence, as long as the subsequent screenings are normal, the rise will rise when it should rise, and the fall will be controlled when it should fall, and it will be easy to recover the cost. Many people in the industry can know this result from various channels. Several executives of Screen Treasures Films, who are very concerned about this, held a meeting to discuss it for a while, and then nothing happened. After all, the means of smearing and guiding are useless. They can't compete with Dead Silence in terms of quality and momentum. What else can they do if they don't accept the reality? The Exorcist, which finally earned more than $75 million in North America with a small cost in the previous life, will obviously not have such a good result again. The competitors are powerful and can't keep the market share, and the decline is obvious. With such realistic scheduling and management of North American theaters, the number of screens and the number of films will soon be reduced. Once these two are reduced, it will definitely increase the difficulty of obtaining box office, and thus the box office will be more insufficient. It's basically a dead circle. On the 18th, new media newspapers were released. Although film critics still have nothing good to say about Dead Silence, the results are there, and it is an ironclad fact. Movie fans obviously also attach great importance to the reference certificate of box office. The attendance rate on the second day not only did not drop, but increased a little. The Los Angeles Times reported, according to the box office statistics of the theater yesterday, the single theater box office of director James Wan's new film exceeded $10,000, which completely detonated the movie market in September. In just 22 hours, 8 screenings, the cumulative box office was $22.82 million. On September 17th, Dead Silence was released nationwide, successfully breaking the first-day performance record of director James Wan. It can be seen that it will be another successful work and the screening will be hot. Nielsen data agency randomly selected 1,500 audience fans who were relatively positive about Dead Silence. More than 20% of them rated A, about 40% rated A, only 20% rated D. The first day of Dead Silence was obviously good. With this result, Blue Butterfly Pictures, including all beneficiaries, became very enthusiastic. In the office of Blue Butterfly Pictures, Lyman received a lot of calls early in the morning. He was basically negotiating with various theater chains to increase investment in screen resources. And it was basically a foregone conclusion that The Exorcist would reduce its share. The theaters don't care about other things. If you can't do it, you can't occupy the extra screening space. After some friendly exchanges of interests, Lyman instructed the employees of the distribution department, prepare 300 copies as soon as possible. The theaters will be anxious to use them in 2 days. Don't delay. As long as the box office does not drop too much, the reference results of the first weekend will basically determine the scale of the screening in the second week. And now, everyone with a discerning eye knows that Dead Silence is basically stable, and theaters will of course make this very simple choice. Speaking of it, aren't they looking for profit? No one will hesitate to maximize the profit. Chapter 557 Weekly Box Office, Subscriptions, Tickets. July 20th, the first weekend box office of Dead Silence was officially released. Although the subject matter was limited to the market and the film critics looked down on this kind of vulgar work, it set off a storm of criticism and complaints. But after the good guidance and public relations of Blue Butterfly Pictures, the audience's reputation of the film was not affected much. Most fans who like horror themes praise the film. Therefore, the movie won $15.72 million on Saturday and $16.46 million on Sunday, with a total of more than $52 million in the first week. For this data, some people are happy and some are worried. The happy ones are naturally the beneficiaries, such as Firefly Pictures, Blue Butterfly Pictures and James Wan and other creative staff. After all, the good results in the first weekend will definitely lay the foundation for the box office market on the next weekday. As long as there is no accident of word-of-mouth collapse, the subsequent North American box office will basically break 100 million. The worried party is naturally the competitors in the same period. Everyone knows that the more fierce the momentum, the more difficult it is to resist. Even Screen Treasures is worried about its own The Exorcist, and is worried that the movie will be a failure. This is indeed the case. After the fight with Dead Silence, the box office market of The Exorcist, which had already begun to decline slowly, fell by 30 to 40%. Although the first wave of screening bonuses has been eaten, the film will not have a problem in recovering its investment and making a profit. But who doesn't want to make more box office money? But after experiencing a sharp decline in the box office curve, the theater chain will never help more. Instead, it has further compressed the screening scale of The Exorcist, from more than 1,700 at its peak to only more than 650 now, and it is expected to be reduced further. Well, if it is reduced again, it can basically be announced that it will be withdrawn from the North American schedule. Sure enough, movies are like gambling, and no one knows what will happen next. Originally, Screen Treasures was not optimistic about The Exorcist at all. The reason for releasing it was just to meet its own business needs. But who knew that The Exorcist unexpectedly rose up, captured the audience market, and sold well in the first week. Seeing that the movie was heading for the box office of more than $70 million when Screen Treasures was diverting resources, it had not made enough money yet, and Firefly Pictures got involved, and the movie with it again. This is really. Screen Treasures didn't know what to say, but this kind of movie thing happens every year. So many first-line masterpieces can fail, let alone fail to meet expectations. No matter what, it is better than not being able to recover the cost. Thinking about it this way, Screen Treasures is still comforted. In the second week, Dead Silence began to go downhill normally. Due to the reduction of the mass base on weekdays, it only won 8.83 million on Monday, a drop of nearly half. On rest days such as Saturday and Sunday, the box office rose rapidly with the increase of the fan base, and basically got more than $11 million. After 7 days in the second week, Dead Silence once again accumulated $45.56 million, successfully sitting on the North American weekly box office champion for 2 consecutive periods, and the second place changed from The Exorcist to Corpse Bride, with a weekly box office of $28.65 million. By the way, the box office trend of this animated film is quite stable. The style is weird, and it tells a sad and beautiful love story for adults. If we ignore the carrying capacity of the production content, Corpse Bride is not so much a work for children as it is for adults. It is not as willing to take care of children as Pixar and Disney, and add a little bit of young age. In fact, after watching the whole animation, I just feel that the characters in it are all tragedies caused by the trapped times. For example, the background of the animation comes from the real religious history of Eastern Europe. At that time, radical anti-Semites would kill brides who had the ability to pass on their family line. When Jewish people got married, many brides died in their wedding dresses. The film can have such a stable box office, and even now it has accumulated $42.75 million in 2 weeks of screening. It is still a non-young animation. The biggest contributors are the 2 directors, Tim Burton and Mike Johnson. In fact, the former should be the producer, but Tim Burton is the one who determines the style of the whole painting, and Mike is the one who executes the content production. Of course, director Tim did not forget his partners, Johnny Depp and his wife Helena. These 2 are both voice actors and the main actors, and the soundtrack is very interesting. Therefore, after the release of Corpse Bride, whether facing Exorcism or Dead Silence, it will naturally hold a market, and no matter who comes to compete, they will earn the money they deserve. Moreover, the slightly more prominent advantage of animated films over live-action films is that they can be screened for a longer period of time. It is estimated that after Dead Silence is removed from the screen, Corpse Bride can continue to stabilize the animation market. Therefore, some evaluation agencies have determined that this animation can break 110 million worldwide. In addition to the long production cycle, animated films generally have less investment in publicity and promotion, and are easy to make good profits. This is why Warner also wants to set up its own animation studio. This one is actually an animation project jointly produced by Warner and Tim Burton, with a production cost of $40 million, a small profit. In the study of The Mansion, Lyman looked at the email sent by Lyman, which talked about the box office data report of Dead Silence and the subsequent market trend analysis. According to the current media reputation and audience evaluation of Dead Silence, Blue Butterfly Pictures was not blindly optimistic. Instead, starting from the 3rd week, after a meeting and discussion, it decided to give up the continued investment in publicity funds. After all, horror themes are niche markets. Once the enthusiasm of the audience and fans is over, the downward trend is quite fast. Only at the moment, we can see such signs. Even if the decline in the 2nd week exceeded 40%, it continued to decline in the 3rd week. Although the starting point is good, it only slightly delayed the decline in screening. This is a problem of the film itself. It is not that the publicity and promotion are not good, but reducing the investment in funds is actually to increase the final profit. With nearly $40 million in production and publicity, the film can recover its costs, as long as North America exceeds $100 million. The remaining overseas markets and offline operations are the biggest sources of profit. Compared with the average data of hit films, the box office performance of Dead Silence is definitely qualified or even excellent. In short, Dead Silence is better than Lyman expected. He originally thought that the film could make money if it could wipe out the expenses in the overseas market. But according to the trend of the film, North America alone can recover the funds, and the remaining parties can share the cake and enjoy it happily. In this regard, with Lyman and Joseph keeping an eye on it, there will be no problems. After thinking about it, Lyman suddenly remembered something and called James one. "Are you free tomorrow? If you have time, come to Firefly. It's not a big deal. Chapter 558 breaking 100 million. Please subscribe and vote. The horror movie Dead Silence, screened last Friday, has earned more than $97.5 million at the North American box office, just one step away from breaking 100 million in North America. The screening of Dead Silence has continued to decline, with the attendance rate barely maintaining 40%, but it still topped the North American weekly box office with $45.56 million US. James Wan is still strong. Will he be the next horror master? Early in the morning, James Wan was in a very good mood. After breakfast and reading the newspaper, he ran to the Firefly building with satisfaction. By the way, after the success of his second directorial work, his status in the Hollywood director circle has obviously risen. Many film studios have sent invitations to work with him. Of course, James Wan knows very well how all this came about. Without the support of Lyman, his career would not be so stable. Therefore, he has never thought about leaving the embrace of Firefly Pictures. This is also because Lyman is willing to share the profits of the film production. He knows very well that momentary emotions cannot compare to the same interests. In any case, as long as James Wan can understand that other studios cannot give more than too much film revenue and voice, he will naturally have a good impression of Firefly Pictures. When they met, Lyman first congratulated him with a tone full of praise. James Wan waved his hand and said, "Lyman, you are too polite. No need to be like this." Speaking of which, James Wan has now embarked on a different path from his previous life, and even his film career has become more smooth. His existence, to some extent, also proves Lyman's vision of training. So, he is really happy for James Wan, not just for the benefit. After a round of greetings, Lyman asked James Wan to sit down and asked the assistant to serve him a cup of coffee. In fact, he asked James Wan to come here today because of the box office bonus. After all, seeing that Dead Silence broke 100 million yuan without any problem, Lyman wanted to give a red envelope to the main creative staff to show his favor. This is actually also a way to encourage the production staff to make more hit movies. As soon as the words came out, James Wan refused and said, "I have already received a lot, so forget about the bonus." He is not a very greedy person, and can even be said to know the current situation. In his previous life, except for a little dirty work with Lionsgate, he had a very pleasant cooperation with Universal and Warner. Don't worry, it's just an incentive. The money is not much, it's just a form. If you don't take it, will the crew members feel embarrassed to take it? This is a bit of a concept substitution. Although the director is a brain-level figure in the crew, it does not mean that the hands, feet and torso are not important. Moreover, the director usually gets a lot, which is much higher than the salary of the production staff. Of course, it is also true that the money is small. Lyman only plans to take out 0.3% of the box office revenue, which is about 400,000 or 500,000 yuan to pay according to the project. This money, for so many people, is actually almost more than a month's salary. Moreover, this is still the box office success of Dead Silence. If the movie is not profitable, Firefly Pictures will definitely not give any bonuses. But since it is going to be released, it can't be too special. After all, the production team is the foundation of a studio. Lyman said so. Of course, James Wan no longer insisted. Although, he felt that there was no need. After chatting for a while, James Wan suddenly asked, "The new film released by Buena Vista International is released. Will it have a big impact on Dead Silence?" Lyman laughed and said, "Don't worry, the audiences of the two movies are not overlapping. People who like to watch horror movies will not dislike watching Dead Silence because of a suspense movie. The opponent of Dead Silence is only limited by the market, not by competition. At least, there will be no competition in September." James Wan nodded. "I have always believed in your judgment. It has been so in the past, and it will be so in the future. So, we have to do a big business together," Lyman said in a joking tone. September 23rd, Thursday night. The suspense movie Sky Crisis held its North American premiere. The production of this film is quite complicated. The project itself was provided by a second-rate media company like Relativity, but it was jointly produced by Universal, Waverly and SRP. Then, in order to distribute the benefits more reasonably, the distribution business was taken over by Bowen International. Of course, this is actually the mainstream production model in Hollywood, which is a risk operation and capital regulation. But obviously, if the project can really make a lot of money, no one would be stupid enough to divide the cake for nothing. Therefore, a group of people were not optimistic about the prospects of this project, but they thought that there might be money to be made after some operation, so they got together. The main cast of this film is Jodie Foster and Sean Bean. By the way, the roles played by Jodie, a powerful actress, are all of the types of perseverance and courage. From The Silence of the Lambs to Panic Room to Insider, the role settings are all the same. In fact, Jodie's face is sharp and angular, with regular features, and she doesn't look like a weak woman. As for the plot of this film, it is certainly not so good, and the rhythm is extremely slow. Anyway, Lemon didn't feel any tension or sense of substitution when watching it. And a suspense film, which can't attract the audience in terms of reasoning and revealing secrets, is obviously not a high quality work. In fact, Lemon also attended the premiere held by Bowen International for the film. After all, Bowen International is the distribution channel of the Disney faction, with a high status in Hollywood and many resources. At the venue, Disney executives also tested Lemon and asked if he was willing to cooperate with Disney. But how is this possible? If Firefly Pictures wants to rise, Disney is the one that needs to be restricted the most. Otherwise, when the 6 majors become 5 majors, or even one of them tops 4, there will be no chance for Firefly Pictures to get on the table. It is estimated that it will be like Lionsgate, which likes to jump around in the future. It is suppressed and withered directly. After all, if you don't give a good schedule, and don't give a good schedule, which studio can compete with Disney? Isn't this a joke? Of course, Lemon didn't say anything final. He is now used to not making promises easily and not offending such Hollywood giants easily. Lemon finally eased the relationship with Paramount and won over Warner and Lionsgate so that he would not have enemies everywhere when he gets involved in a wider distribution and production business in the future. As the saying goes, unite the majority and strike against the small group. Warner seems to be the most powerful one here, but Warner lacks foundation. It seems that Disney's film business is growing at an average rate, but they have the most comprehensive peripheral promotion and killer weapon, complete animation production, as well as a large number of character images, such as Donald Duck, The Lion King, and other classic authorizations. It can be said that no one can compete with Disney in terms of capital. Moreover, this potential has not been fully released, otherwise it would be even more terrible. Chapter 559 Air Crisis Subscriptions, Votes Required. After the release of Sky Crisis, it was unsurprisingly ridiculed by film critics. The film seems to have broken through the old routine of traditional air disaster films, but the plot is not as good as the old routine design of films such as Con Air and Sky One. I don't know what this film wants to say, and I don't know where such a stupid villain comes from. The solo scene at the end is even more unbearable to watch. It is forced to lower the intelligence and round off the scene to highlight the female lead. It is too stiff, and it is still a suspense film. Jodie's participation in Sky Crisis is her most strong choice. As soon as the new film was released, it encountered a review crisis. And unlike Dead Silence, which was sought after by some fans, even though many audiences have a good impression of Jodie Foster, after all, she rarely appears in the spotlight except for filming. They really can't accept it. Therefore, after the first day of the release and the midnight show, The Silence only received $15.03 million, which is not only inferior to the relatively niche horror themes Dead Silence and The Exorcist in the same period, but also far from the $47.6 million of Shark Tale, the box office leader in the latter part of September last year. Even so, relying on the freshness of the new film premiere, The Silence still sits firmly on the throne of the daily box office champion, but the gold content of this top spot is really depreciating. The film market has dropped by 26 percentage points compared to the total box office in the first half of September. After all, Dead Silence, which was screened for the third week, has fallen out of the top 3 and only earned $6.87 million, and The Exorcist was directly withdrawn from the North American market. In fact, there are 3 new works in the North American film market this week, but they obviously can't even compete with the lagging The Silence. Among them, there is the sci-fi movie Firefly adapted from the TV series, which ranks second on the daily list with $10.14 million. There is a Hollywood new darling, the beautiful Vaz Jessica Alba, who has become more and more popular with Sin City, starring the thriller action movie In the Blue, which earned more than $7 million and ranked third. The fifth is the sports inspirational movie The Last Shot about golf, which was released with the help of Disney and won $6.35 million box office. Entering the second week, that is, after October, The Sky relied on a little resilience and desperate publicity to continue to lead the North American box office market among a group of new films that were compared with each other and won the championship. 10 days after its release, the total North American box office of The Sky was $46.2 million. Although the National Flight Attendant Union called on the media and fans to boycott the film on the grounds that the plot vilified the image of flight attendants, it seems that the verbal battle between the crew and the media has made The Sky get extra attention. I have to say that there may be a shadow of Bowen International in this. As for publicity, if they can't make a good reputation, they will make a bad reputation. Anyway, no matter what, it must be better than having no reputation. People in the industry are aware of this, so it doesn't matter how the verbal battle is fought, who'll benefit is clear at a glance. And obviously, with such hype, the final box office of Sky Crisis can increase by 10 or 20 million, so it won't be a loss-making business. As for Dead Silence, because the horror theme is naturally not suitable for long-term screening, the total cumulative North American box office has exceeded 120 million in the nearly 1-month schedule. Now the daily box office is less than 2 million. It is estimated that the next movie will be released in a few days. On October 8th, Lyman saw the slightly haggard Gyro at Firefly Pictures. What's wrong with you? As a studio partner who can provide film sources, Lyman asked with concern. Because he looked like he hadn't rested for several days, with thick bloodshot eyes. Gyro shook his head and forced a smile. I'm fine. I just wrote a script and wanted to show it to you. Do you want an investment? Gyro didn't deny it and handed over the prepared shooting plan and the script. Lyman flipped through it and roughly understood the creative ideas of the film. Well, this guy is still going to shoot a fantasy movie. The background is the Spanish Civil War and the dictatorship during the Franco period. In fact, after shooting the first 4 episodes of the first season of The Walking Dead, Gyro went back to his hometown to rest for a few months, and the shooting idea of this movie was born during this period. In 2001, he shot The Devil's Backbone, which was a weird type of work about an orphanage in the Spanish Civil War, and this Pan's Labyrinth was created based on The Devil's Backbone. But after returning to Los Angeles, Gyro felt that he had to change his original intention of being too weird because the performance of The Devil's Backbone was not as good as the works in recent years, so he wanted to write it in the style of fairy tales and fables. During this period, he read many books such as 1001 Nights and Grimm's Fairy Tales, and was deeply influenced by the illustrations in them, which broadened his visual horizons. Therefore, in the end, this work has become a work that is not suitable for children to watch, but it is indeed an evil version of Alice in Wonderland, created by fairy tales. Lyman also saw that Top was serious, not like the playful entertainment of Hellboy. The design of many scenes is very serious, with high emotional connotations and critical nature. In other words, for this work, Top wanted to shoot a deeper meaning, which can bring the audience to think about the high pressure and harm suffered by the people under war and dictatorship. After reading the script, Lyman savored it lightly and then said, I have invested in this project. I'm willing to support it, whether it is funding or distribution. What do you mean? Top could feel his attention and concern from Lyman's attitude. To be honest, he really spent a lot of effort on this work. In terms of preparation, he revised 3 versions before finally finalizing the script. In a parallel universe, Gyro took the project to many people, but failed to attract investment. The most important reason was that this guy did not intend to use English dialogue, but respected the background, and filmed in Spanish to make it a foreign film. In this way, which Hollywood studio was willing to take the risk to invest In the end, it was his good friend Alfonso Cuarón who strongly supported him. He not only served as the producer of the project, but also helped to attract investors with his connections. He also dispersed and let 3 or 5 independent studios jointly invest. Everyone worked together with the idea of losing less money to get the production done. In fact, Gyro is worthy of being a monster fantasy professional. This movie has a small investment. In order to save money, the actors found are not famous at all, but won the Palme d'Or in one fell swoop, and then won a lot of Oscars, truly moving from business to award-winning art. This genius has a quirk, which everyone knows. After all, his hobbies are very different from others since childhood. It can be said that he is a very stubborn person. And now, he stubbornly believes that the language setting of the movie cannot be changed for English or something. Just look at the subtitles. It is not aimed at respecting the audience in English speaking areas at all. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 560 Pan's Labyrinth subscriptions, votes. In Lemon's office, Gyro was sitting opposite him and was quite nervous. He knew that Lemon trusted the director very much and was willing to give him power, but if he really wanted to make a foreign film, he was still worried that the project he proposed would be shot down. After all, who would be willing to invest in a movie whose market prospects were unknown? Even he himself was inspired and invested in this work with passion, and never thought about whether it would make money or not. However, with an inexplicable mood, Gyro still came. Even if he was rejected, he would not take it to heart. At this moment, he said with a little emotion, Pan's Labyrinth is based on the story of Spain during World War II in 1945. It has a certain era background. It depicts the high-pressure rule at that time with a girl who is very sensitive in adolescence. It is said to be fantasy, but it is actually escape and comfort. Why are those seemingly unreal things not real? Sometimes people's hearts are more frightening than monsters with hideous faces. It seems that you have thought a lot. Lemon smiled. Well, I've been thinking about it for several nights in a row. Sometimes I even dream about this story. Although it's weird, I've really invested a lot in it. I can't let it go, and I just want to finish it. Do you think a movie like this can sell well in the United States or other European regions? Maybe, I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Gyro was a little tired. How much investment? I'm asking how much money you need to complete these plans. Gyro's heart warmed up, and he rubbed his thighs with his hands. After thinking for a while, he said, at least more than 17 million. The cost of costumes and props must be the biggest part. What about the actors? You can save a little on the actors. Have more auditions and find some cheap ones. Lemon pointed to the role of Fawn in the script, a half-human, half-goat, half-beast guardian with transparent eyes, and said, don't you want Ron Perlman to play this role? Ron is too expensive. If you choose him, the shooting budget will have to increase by at least 5 million. Gyro was still very considerate of Lemon. He didn't want the cost to be high and lose too much money. After all, he really had no confidence that the film would be a hit. Who knew that Pan's Labyrinth would be well received by critics and then win awards one after another, relying on the popularity of the awards to attract the curiosity of a group of young literary and artistic people, and then it would reap the box office. This is just like the annual Oscar Best Picture performance is not bad. The Cannes Golden Palm has a good reputation in the whole world, and the literary and artistic audiences can't help but buy it. God has mercy on me. Gyro has never thought of these routines, and dare not think of them. This guy has never won any credible awards before. In this regard, Cannes is a little fairer than the Oscars. It doesn't look at seniority so much, and there is no rule that it is difficult to win the best picture for the first time. It directly gave Gyro a surprise. Of course, he is still in the mentality of saving money and losing less. He has no bottom. Just find him. The right actor can add a lot of color to a movie. If he is suitable, don't miss it. Lemon said seriously, as long as the budget of this project does not exceed 25 million, I will take it. Ron Perlman is a very favorite actor of Gyro. The two have worked together many times and have a familiar relationship. Seeing that Lyman took the initiative to increase the shooting budget, he was grateful, and of course he would not refuse. Who would not want to choose the best production team? I will definitely shoot it well and make the movie well. Finally, Gyro put away the script and left Firefly Pictures in high spirits. In fact, Gyro's directorial style not only likes to use setting material such as fantasy monsters, but also takes his own filming very seriously and is not lazy. Perhaps it is because the opportunity is hard won. He has gone through a lot of hardships and suffered a lot of exclusion and discrimination from the local circle. From a filmmaker born in Mexico to get to where he is today, he has been calculating carefully all the way. And his experience in using costumes and props has saved a lot of budget for this film. If it were another director, $25 million might not be enough. On October 10th, the number of screens for Dead Silence in North American cinemas was less than 200, which was also an early sign that it would be taken off the screen in another week. At this time, the box office performance of Dead Silence was basically not impressive, and every bit of it was worth it. The film was released for 23 days, and the North American box office totaled $121.6 million, which was a good box office result. As for the overseas screening market that was launched 2 weeks later, the situation was also optimistic. Although traditional film markets such as the United Kingdom, France, and Italy were not very receptive to a horror movie, and European audiences generally did not like this tone. However, in Asia, Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Singapore and other places still provided good support for the screening of Dead Silence. Relying on the powerful promotion of theaters, just when Dead Silence was about to be taken off the screen in North America, the global box office had reached more than $194 million US. It was only more than $50 million away from the $200 million mark. Although overseas regions are not very popular, there are so many places showing the film, and even if it is not very good, you can still contribute a few $100,000. If you add it all up, the overseas performance is naturally good. In this regard, if it is a Hollywood commercial blockbuster that meets the tastes of the public, the overseas performance can basically be higher than the North American box office. For example, Star Wars 3 only made more than $380 million in North America, but more than $400 million overseas, which adds up to more than $850 million, which is a lot of money. There are also 3D animated films from Pixar Studios, which are basically higher overseas than domestic, making crazy money. Among them, in fact, there is no cultural barrier between these films, or those filmmakers deliberately reduce cultural differences. However, Dead Silence is obviously a negative example. This film is considered a work with a great cultural barrier. Because it is influenced by Eastern thoughts, audiences in Asia can accept the settings in it, but there are few supporters in the European ticket market, which makes the overseas box office growth very slow. Basically, it can be seen from the data growth that Dead Silence will not be a big hit. It is estimated that, if the performance of so many regions added together can be on par with that of North America, it will be considered good. However, when the performance of Dead Silence was reported to Hollywood, many filmmakers were jealous. There are not many movies that can break 200 million worldwide these days. Although the North American film market is still growing, and the number of theaters is increasing, making movies is still a very risky thing. Although it seems to be very profitable, a blockbuster can make quick money for several years, but why not take a look at those companies that are losing money to bankruptcy? Therefore, the performance of Dead Silence is still enviable, and the low-cost investment is also the most recognized aspect. For a time, Hollywood has once again started a trend of shooting horror themes. Unfortunately, this theme is not something that every director can handle. Chapter 561, Occasional Gains. Please subscribe and vote. October 15th, the morning sun shone into the large bedroom through the French windows. Lyman, who was slightly awake, opened his eyes and immediately hugged Eva's soft body tightly. He smelled the faint fragrance of shampoo in his nose, and he couldn't help being lazy and unwilling to get up. After a few minutes of dawdling, Eva said, "Get up." "Yeah." Lyman agreed and sat up from the bed. "Are you going out tomorrow?" In addition to the 007 project, are there any other roles for you? Regarding Casino Royale, Johnson is still busy communicating with MGM. It will probably be prepared this year, but it can't start filming, so I took another movie. It's an independent work. The salary is not much, but the role is quite interesting. There is a lot of room for development. It's just right to hone my acting skills. This is a good thing, but this kind of project is very insecure. Most of them are 3-day tours in theaters and have no market prospects. It's okay. There's no pressure to act in independent works. After the two washed up and had breakfast, they went to the hotel together to attend the celebration party of Dead Silence. After the film was withdrawn from North America, it continued to reap box office revenue overseas, but this did not affect Firefly Pictures' desire to encourage the main creative staff of the crew and to help them concentrate. The cocktail party began around 10 a.m. Because it was an internal gathering, the scale was actually small, but the atmosphere was lively. After all the filming staff received incentive bonuses for the box office success of Dead Silence. In the bustle, Lemon saw Top again. He came to Lemon for the new film Pan's Labyrinth. It's only been 2 or 3 days, and you've prepared the filming task? Lemon picked up the plan preparation table on it, and looked at Top in surprise. Well, he underestimated this guy's enthusiasm, or rather, Top was very excited to encounter a project that he was fascinated by and could direct. It's still in the preparation stage, and the actor only sent a message to Ron Perelman, but in order to start filming as soon as possible, it's better not to delay it. Top looked in good spirits and replied with a smile. Is Alfonso Cuarón the producer of this project? Is he willing? At this time, no one had ever mentioned the so-called 3 great Mexican directors. In Hollywood at this time, the most influential and well-established Mexican director was undoubtedly Alfonso Cuarón. While Gonzalez was still polishing small literary and artistic productions and had not yet become famous internationally, Gyro had just realized the direction of future filming from the bad taste B-level movies. But Alfonso was already a big director who had directed Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. He has nothing to do recently, and he is quite interested in this project. Don't worry about the salary. He is here to help, and I will pay for it myself. Gyro seemed to have thought of something and hurried to explain. That's not what I meant. Since he is willing to help you, pay from the project budget, and the production business will follow the rules. With Alfonso Cuarón's status, the salary for being a producer was not that high, and Lemon didn't care about this expense. After the cocktail party, Lemon instructed Joseph to connect the budget with the new project, prepared by Gyro, as soon as possible. The director's salary has increased by 30% compared to that of Hellboy, which is about $6.5 million plus $5 million production costs borne by his own studio. In terms of the profit space of the co-producers, it is estimated that Gyro's studio can account for 10% of the total box office revenue of the film, excluding the theater share, and the copyright belongs to Firefly Pictures. However, Gyro's studio also has a share of the sequel and even a flying peripherals. Later, just after the project of Pan's Labyrinth was established, Gyro was busy preparing for the crew. Lemon saw the possibility of a good project adaptation from the quarterly sales list of Random House. Speaking of which, adapting popular novels into film and television dramas is a very popular project development method in the circle. But Firefly Pictures actually has little experience in this regard, which is also a matter of great surprise to Warner, Lionsgate and other interested parties. The majority of Firefly's projects are original scripts, which is very rare. On this day, after reading a certain novel, Lemon took out his phone and called his agent Johnson. Please keep an eye out for the adaptation rights of a novel. Lemon glanced at the newspaper and continued, the name is The Devil Wears Prada. After hanging up the phone, Lemon was thoughtful. And this work may have another translation that is more well known, The Queen Wears Prada. Johnson received the call and immediately set off for Ohio. On the way, the content of the novel emerged in his mind. From the editor-in-chief of Random House, he quickly got the address of the original author and went to test it in person. Johnson has been with Lemon for so many years and has a certain understanding of him. Generally speaking, he doesn't like people to interfere in his private affairs, but if it is not a private matter, and it is a novel author, then it is very likely that this will mean that this will be the next film project of Firefly Pictures, and it is also a fashion work for the female market. The Devil Wears Prada is a novel about a female college student who joins a top fashion magazine as an assistant editor-in-chief. Well, it's quite GI. It is estimated that for female readers, getting close to the secrets of the fashion circle is the topic that they are most curious about. After all, according to the editor-in-chief, this novel is very popular among the readers, mainly housewives, and it has been on the sales list for 50 consecutive weeks. It seems that there is still market potential to be explored. The editor of Random House has a point. But after Johnson hurriedly read the original book, he found that the writing style of the novel was quite rubbish. It was not a very introverted or innovative work. However, this was what Lyman asked him to do, and he seemed quite interested. Johnson naturally raised his energy and prepared to make a good plan. But unexpectedly, the adaptation rights have been sold. After finally finding the author Lauren Weisberg and explaining the purpose, this is the situation again. Lauren Weisberg herself was also confused. She is 28 years old this year. In 2003, she published the novel The Devil Wears Prada, based on her own workplace experience. But the novel actually became a big hit in mid-2004. In 2003, she didn't know much about the market at that time. When she met a Fox employee who came to discuss the adaptation rights, she was very happy to give it to him. But after giving it to him, she was told that it would depend on Fox's plan to make it into a movie. Yes, 2 years have passed, and the total sales of the novel are getting higher and higher, but the adaptation is still a long way off. Lauren Weisberg was very annoyed about this, because if it is not made into a movie, it not only means the loss of copyright income, but also means that she can't see her own work on the movie screen. She was so frustrated, but she had no way to deal with Fox. Because top studios like these are used to spending a little money to stockpile the more popular books on the market as company reserves. As for whether to shoot or not, let's talk about it later. Of course, as a novice in the film and television industry, Lauren didn't understand this at all, and the result was completely different from what she imagined. What a pity that Fox also promised her that she could play a role in the movie and show her face. Can you show me the signed adaptation contract? Johnson was unwilling to give up. Chapter 562 Green Pictures, Subscriptions, Tickets. Fox and Lauren signed a very common adaptation plan in the industry. Focusing on the film and television adaptation rights of The Devil Wears Prada, Fox paid a $5 million advance payment and obtained the novel adaptation rights for 5 years. If Fox does not fulfill the film and television production of the novel within 5 years, the copyright will automatically return to Lauren. In addition, once the film is shot, the author Lauren will be fully involved, including script adaptation, casting rights, and promised appearances, as well as box office share after the film is released, and 10% of the total revenue from a flying copyright promotion. It seems that this contract seems to be very good, and Fox is very sincere about the adaptation. This is also the reason why Lauren excitedly agreed with the reference of professional lawyers. Unfortunately, Fox's ethics are not so noble at all. They can easily shoot a bad drama of Fantastic Four to increase the adaptation period and fool Marvel, not to mention that they will pay attention to this kind of original novels that only have a little market. Therefore, out of the $5 million advance payment, they only paid $2 million, and the remaining $3 million will be paid after the project starts. The reason for this is that Fox is perfunctory. After all, novel adaptation is also a popular trend in film and television production these days. With the Harry Potter series and the Lord of the Rings series as examples, Fox is just attacking its enemies, hoarding the market, and increasing the space for its own project selection. As for the empty words that are very optimistic, they are all nonsense. Fox only looks at the benefits. As long as the prospects are suitable, it will naturally shoot. The original author Lauren's urging is useless except for disgusting. Or the adaptation contract is about to expire, and Fox may be disgusted again, taking some money to fool around, and continue to hold the copyright for a long time. This kind of thing, which studio has done a lot, the core is to procrastinate. Johnson read the signed contract in detail and hurriedly returned to CAA to mobilize resources to check Fox's internal project production. If you want to make a movie, you have to set up a project, and if you set up a project, you can find it, and if you want to find actors, you can't avoid CAA. After all, CAA has the largest share and the most resources in Hollywood. This check gave me good news and bad news. The good news is that Fox did not approve the project. The bad news is that Fox wanted to shoot it in 2003 but couldn't find a suitable director, so it was shelved. Fox initially selected Peter Hedges, who had directed fragments of April and Love Is War as the director. However, after revising the script, he didn't like the story and felt it was hypocritical and disgusting and didn't know how to continue the adaptation, so he didn't take it. After checking the information, I had a rough idea in my mind. Johnson replied to Lyman and told him the general information of the work. Lyman was also surprised after hearing it. He had never thought that this matter was so complicated. He just got excited and saw the news that the novel was a hit in the newspaper. He knew the general trend of the future and just wanted to pursue his interests, but didn't think it would be so tortuous. Why not forget it? Lyman thought it was troublesome. But Johnson said, "Is there a market for adaptation of this novel?" "Yes, there is. Female fans may like it very much," Lyman said vaguely. "Then try again. I'll ask someone to contact Fox and bring up this project. Will they agree? Fox doesn't need this little copyright fee." Lyman was a little skeptical. "Don't worry, I'll invite the author of the novel to try together. Anyway, Fox has no plans to shoot in the near future, so why won't they let it go? Besides, I've met that author. She's quite capable and not easy to fool, especially after suffering a loss once." Johnson sorted out the plan carefully and said with some confidence, "Then, we can't use the name of Firefly Pictures, otherwise Fox will never let it go. Under the current situation, if Firefly Pictures intervenes in this project, it will be difficult not to attract Fox's attention. After all, everyone in Hollywood knows that Lyman has a good eye, and there is no loss in the projects he produces. Do you have any other ways?" Lyman asked again. "Use an empty shell company, get the copyright first, and then transfer it to Firefly Pictures," Johnson suggested. "There are many such empty shell companies in Hollywood, such as the director's personal studio at the beginning, most of which were established just to better participate in the project production as an investor." "Okay, wait for my news." In the mansion in Beverly Hills, Eva was writing and drawing on the sofa, looking lazy. After a while, Lyman came back. Hearing the noise, Eva asked in surprise, "Why are you back so early today? Is there nothing to do at the company?" "Yes, but I want to talk to you." "Talk about what?" Eva asked. "Do you know Gale Ann Hurd?" "Yes." Eva looked like you think I don't know anything. "And this is one of the best gold medal producers in the circle. He has participated in a series of hit movies such as the Terminator series, the Alien series, The Abyss, and Sweet Moments. His net worth is extremely high. At least, it is not much different from Lyman's personal net worth at this time, and her studio is also very famous in the circle. The reason is that the projects that this strong woman likes are often sold out. Ann Hurd is most talked about for choosing James Cameron, the 1,000-mile horse, and using $1 to get his script adaptation work, helping to pull the strings and develop the Terminator project. Of course, they later got married and divorced 4 years later. "Why are you saying this?" Eva was a little surprised. "Don't you have any further plans for your career?" Lyman continued to hint. "I think filming is good." This is Eva's truest thought. She is quite independent in her bones. Even though Lyman is already the owner of a studio, she has never thought about making too much trouble. If there is a suitable role, she will shoot it, and if there is no role, it doesn't matter. It is precisely because of her mentality, or restraint, that Lyman's perception of her is getting better and better. "Well, I think you can try to expand your business scope to production. You are not short of fame now. Many actors will try to rise from participants to producers after becoming famous. This is not only an improvement in status, but also a channel for monetizing resources. You can contact a lot of people now, but I have never done these. I can always learn. I like acting. I'm not asking you to give up. If you don't encounter a good project you can produce, it won't delay you. Eva thought carefully for a while before she cheered up again. It seems that she was convinced. Finally, Lyman said, I will register a shall film company in your name, and you can learn how to produce in the future. What's the name? Green Pictures. Chapter 563. Small-minded. Subscribe. Recommend. During this period, James Wan took some of the main creators of Dead Silence to promote it in batches in various European countries. On the other hand, Nolan also returned from the UK and discussed the script of The Prestige with his brother Jonathan all day, deleting and revising it. After that, Gyro was busy with Pan's Labyrinth, and Johnson and Eva had already made an appointment with Lauren Weisberg, the author of The Devil Wears Prada, and bought back the copyright from Fox. It cost $5 million, and Fox still made $3 million US. Of course, maybe Fox will regret it after the movie is released. But movies are also a business. If you make money, you can celebrate, and if you are cheated, you have to accept your fate. Anyway, it is Fox itself that has been slow to develop the project, and it is completely unnecessary to discuss the ownership of the copyright later. After getting the copyright of Prada, Green Films will sign a new adaptation contract with Lauren. With Eva's current strength, it is impossible to invest in a project. First, there is no one. Second, there is no way. Of course, Firefly Pictures and Green Pictures need to co-produce the film, which will serve the purpose of diverting attention. And in this way, it can also be regarded as a little weakening of Fox Pictures' strength. After all, if Man Media continues to develop in a healthy way, it will sooner or later face competition from the Big Six. Then Fox, which has never exchanged interests, is obviously the enemy of the group. Hi, Lemon, let me introduce you. This is the author of the novel, Ms. Lauren, and this is her lawyer and agent Nordley. Johnson took the lead in introducing the two parties. Hello, Lauren. Lemon stretched out his hand and greeted. Lauren Weisberg stood up nervously, shook hands with Lemon, and saw the big director in front of her with a smile on his face. The whole person was so excited that she almost fainted. In fact, she only realized at this moment that the joint action with Johnson in the past few days was really going to be made into a movie. My book is going to enter Hollywood. Lemon last, one of the most famous directors today, the pride of the French, and he actually took a fancy to my novel. This is what Lauren thinks. And this lady is not as innocent as she seems. She may be excited, but she cares more about her own interests. You know, this lady has prevented Fox from casting. At that time, the director had not been appointed, but when the script of Prada was handed to Natalie Portman, she clearly expressed her disapproval, thinking that her image was not good enough to play herself. The whole book was written from the author's perspective. But in fact, Lauren herself is not good looking, let alone compared with Natalie. Maybe if it weren't for this book, she wouldn't even have the opportunity to enter Hollywood. But this is enough to reflect her pickiness and possible troubles during production. Lemon hates non-professionals' interference in production. After a pleasantry, Lemon politely stated that he liked the novel very much. In fact, if it weren't for the negotiation, he wouldn't have read it completely. Because after collecting information about this person, Lemon also understood why Peter Hedges withdrew from the adaptation and refused to take over the project. Combined with the description in the book, the heroine is innocent in her youth, graduated from a prestigious university but not arrogant, full of responsibility, and works hard, but Lauren herself is narrow-minded. It is true that she graduated from a prestigious university, and she did enter the most influential magazine in the fashion circle, Vogue, as soon as she graduated from school. But she is not as positive as described in the book. On the contrary, because she can't stand the intensity of work and the pressure of her career itself, she took the initiative to jump to another magazine and turned back to disgust her boss. The devil in this book is a real Vogue editor-in-chief, Anna Winter, who smears everywhere and sets the tone. If Lemon were to say it, it would be fine to complain about the boss behind his back, but he also wrote a novel with a Mary Sue bloody plot, venting his anger by selling other people's privacy, adding how silly and sweet he is everywhere, implying his boss, and consuming his boss as a tyrant. The real purpose is not only to disgust the other party, but also to make money accidentally. What is the deeper intention? Whether in the East or the West, this kind of backhanded stabbing and profiting from other people's privacy will not make people feel good. After learning everything, Lemon was also defeated by Lauren's shamelessness. No wonder you look down on Natalie. It turns out you are not clean. But things have come to this point. Lemon just wants to quickly put this guy aside and shoot the original version so that Anna Wintour's role will become a career-oriented strong woman, that is, a queen, rather than a devil who cannot tolerate others and treats subordinates harshly. Fortunately, the screenwriters and directors of the original movie still have IQ. If they really set up the characters in the book intact and mixed the author's private goods and evil thoughts everywhere, it is estimated that this movie will not be so popular. Back to the topic. After Lemon stated that he would fulfill the contract and make it into a movie, Lauren was obviously more convinced, especially after comparing Fox's procrastination and perfunctory. But obviously, her agent is not a fuel-saving lamp and immediately began to fight for better conditions for her employer. Everyone, in order to protect Ms. Lauren's interests, I have already told Mr. Johnson my basic requirement that the copyright income must be shared by the original author and it cannot be sold out. Lemon smiled and said, of course, since it is a cooperative relationship, I will naturally not embezzle the author's share. Lauren interrupted, can I appear on the screen? Fox promised me a role with a face. Lemon smiled and said, does it have to be a face? It's actually not necessary. No, it's necessary. I have never been involved in film production. Lauren said firmly, I can do without a salary. Oh, is this about the salary? You are a newcomer who is not in the mainstream. A few $1,000s is enough. But after Lemon knew her character, he didn't want to give her the right to participate, just to satisfy a little vanity. It may affect a project worth tens of millions of dollars. Who do you think you are? Even Tom Cruise doesn't dare to give a role to others casually. Okay. Let's talk about this later. Lemon frowned slightly and said perfunctorily. Agent Nordley took out the draft of the contract and continued, well, there are still some details that need to be discussed. For example, the casting must be approved by Ms. Lauren, and, is this all your idea? Lemon still had a smile on his face, but he was obviously impatient. Damn it, you are a writer of Mary Sue novels. Why do you want to interfere in film and television production? Do you understand script writing? Do you understand audience market analysis? Do you understand budget setting? Do you know what compromise and giving up mean? You know nothing, a complete layman, but you want to have such a big say. No wonder director Peter was disgusted, and no wonder Fox let go so easily. This guy really likes to meddle in other people's business. Chapter 564. Greedy. Subscription. Recommendation. Perhaps it was many predecessors who gave Lauren Weisberg the confidence to learn from them. For example, in the Lord of the Rings series, New Line Cinema not only spent a high amount of money on adaptation, but also agreed to give up 7.5% of the total revenue of the film. For the Harry Potter series, Time Warner mobilized the resources of the entire group, spent money to promote the novel all over the world, and then made the book more popular through movies. Warner has paid enough, right? Should it be considered as Joan Rowling's benefactor? After all, this guy's novel was published for 2 years, and he fell to the point of receiving government subsidies. Obviously, his life is not good. But after the novel became popular, what did she do? After the adaptation rights of the first 3 parts were made into movies, Warner made a lot of money and first refused to sell the copyrights of the subsequent 4 sequels and took the opportunity to make various strict demands because she felt that the cooperation was unfair and needed additional compensation. Warner was not a dry meal, and it agreed helplessly on the surface, just like raising an ungrateful person, and gave her the position of producer, allowing her to participate in the production and become an investor. The backhand is a heavy punch. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, the box office in the United States achieved $612 million, but when the revenue was divided, Warner lost $167 million. The reason is that Warner deducted up to $212 million in distribution expenses, and the distribution of this movie was controlled by Warner throughout the process. Don't ask. Asking is naked bullying. Even Wall Street dares to cheat, let alone a novel author. Don't you want money? How can you give it when you lose money? I have to say that Warner's move is too cruel, which is actually disgusting. Rowling. After all, in order to promote Harry Potter, Warner spent so much money and resources, but you are not satisfied. What else can you do? Isn't it just a comparison of routines? The studio is really good at routines. After all, the publicity and production of this thing are all self-quoted. I said that a beggar's outfit costs $300,000 and a straw hat costs $200,000. I know it is a scam, but I can't find it out by checking the accounts. The same is true for publicity, because the channels are in their own hands. If I say it cost 200 million, then it is 200 million, and it is not. If I say it cost 5 million, then it is 5 million, and it is not. How can you check it? It is ridiculous to think about it. With so many role models in front of him, Lauren probably is not satisfied with the adaptation fee, so he wants to get a piece of meat from the production. Little do they know that the film industry is so easy. Moreover, the reputation of The Devil Wears Prada is not as good as these series of novels. Why do you ask for so much? Of course, in the eyes of Westerners, everything is based on interests, and there is nothing wrong with asking for it in this negotiation. Interests, you want it, I want it, everyone wants it, but what Lemon recognizes most is that you get the money according to how much work you do. He can share the profits with Gyro, Nolan, James Wan, and Zack Snyder, because they can do things and have the ability, but not Lauren, who is a pure layman. Moreover, the copyright fee is not less, basically the market price. Lemon smiled and said, "It's okay. We should have agreed on the terms in advance to avoid trouble." Lauren thought she had given in and took it for granted that without the novel, how could the project be produced? So she continued to strive for better conditions. I hope the 5-year term can be changed to 2 years. Well, the future revenue of the film will increase from 10% to 20%. Also, when the film is shot, can I participate in the whole process? I don't want anyone to modify my work at will. Lemon continued to nod, seeming easy to talk to. Prada has a part of my own portrayal. I hope that the heroine will not only be beautiful, but also have beautiful blonde hair. Lemon glanced at her. Oh, you dyed your hair blonde too. The reason for not liking Natalie was found. Is she Jewish? Where did the blonde hair come from? Oh, is this considered racial discrimination? Director Lemon, you are really considerate. Then, can my boyfriend also have a role to show his face? It would be best if we play lovers in the film. When this request came out, even the agent Nordley next to him felt that it was excessive and lowered his eyes to avoid looking. But Lemon still smiled. Okay, it's a reasonable request. But, he changed the subject and frowned. How about you be the producer of the project? In this way, the conditions you put forward are all the normal work of the producer, and you can also help control the specific shooting. Really? Lauren was a little surprised. Of course, but my preliminary estimate of this project is that it will take at least 30 million to complete. As a producer, you have a certain investment share. In addition to the interests of the author, do you want to invest this? Lauren couldn't make up her mind because she had never invested in a movie and subconsciously didn't want to pay. Don't you want to be the producer of your own work and shoot your favorite work yourself? I think there shouldn't be anyone who knows this novel better than you. It's a very simple provocation. Lauren didn't understand film and television production. It was just a pure investment behavior. But she must be very vain. How could a person who doesn't care about fame and fortune deliberately use the fashion circle as the content of the creation to allude to her boss? Think about it. You know that she cares a lot. As expected, after some inner struggle, and perhaps because the great director in front of her seemed easy to talk to, Lauren Weisberg discussed with her agent for a few more words before saying again, how much do I need to invest? 3 million, accounting for 15% of the box office profit. Salary is included. Lemon thought for a while, and gave an answer. I have invested. Then, can the specific position and conditions be written into the contract? Of course, this is a necessary process. It is more sincere to put it in black and white when it is verbal. Lauren no longer had any doubts, and she did not think her conditions were too much. Was it too much? The but determines the head. The signing of the contract went very smoothly. Lemon almost met all the other parties' requirements, and of course there would be no more disagreements. When Lemon took Johnson out of the law firm, the smile that was always on his face was restrained, and he seemed unusually calm. Greedy. Just now, because Lemon was the one who made the decision, Johnson had not expressed his opinion, but it was obvious that he was a little annoyed. In this world, people who help others in times of need are not necessarily grateful. In Lauren, Lemon saw the shadow of Rowling, the pride of the British literary world. The most popular series of books in the world. How much investment was made behind this? And how much will be gained? Lemon now knew why Warner was so ruthless. Logically speaking, Warner didn't like to bully people and bully in a rogue way. But a top studio in the industry has its own pride. If it really played tricks, it would really play people in the palm of its hand. Chapter 565. Dead Silence Profits. Please subscribe, recommend. By the time Lemon and others had initially dealt with the copyright issue for The Devil Wears Prada, it was already late October. Dead Silence had also been screened overseas for nearly 2 months, and under the constant attention of the distribution department of Blue Butterfly Pictures, it climbed up step by step 200 million, 220 million, 230 million until the end. In the end, Dead Silence ended perfectly with 122 million in North America, 115 million overseas, and a total global box office of 237 million. This is another work by James Wan that has made a lot of money with a small investment. Although it does not have the long and tenacious series life of Saw, and can create continuous profits, it still brought a lot of shock to Hollywood. Of course, it is nothing in terms of momentum, and even many viewers will not watch it from beginning to end, but this movie makes money. The production cost plus publicity and promotion does not exceed $45 million, of which $48.8 million is shared by North American theaters, $57.5 million is shared by overseas theaters, and $17.25 million is spent on overseas distribution. The total cost is $168.55 million, and the net profit is $68.45 million. Blue Butterfly Pictures publicity and promotion commission is not counted. Generally speaking, it is 15% in North America, the internal price. And the $68.45 million box office profit is entirely the income of the producer. Of course, the $13.69 million from James Wan's studio must be deducted. Therefore, Firefly Pictures' net income on this project is $36.76 million. It seems very little, especially compared to the volume of 200 million, but before Lemon did not have a North American distribution channel, this more than $36 million could not be earned. And it is well known that the most profitable Hollywood movies are offline and copyright peripherals. Take the Disney Group as an example. The annual box office revenue is less than 25% of the company's annual profit. Of course, Firefly Pictures does not have such a deep copyright development method as others, both real estate and dolls, but it can basically reap twice the box office profit of the film offline. As for Disney, if the box office revenue of a film accounts for 1/4 of the offline plus copyright revenue, it is a mistake. After the film was completely taken off the shelves, the DVD was released. It was on the sales list in the first week and ranked second, with a total of 110,000 copies sold. After the release of the disc, there are TV stations, which charge for on-demand broadcasting, or sell out the rights to broadcast a round of broadcasts. After the TV stations, there are also peripheral sales. In this part, Firefly Pictures is authorized to sell character images to toy companies such as Mattel. It is worth mentioning here that the Puppet Billy's doll of the same name actually sold well. Generally speaking, the peripherals of horror movies have no potential, which is a pleasant surprise. Roughly speaking, the Dead Silence project can bring at least $84.548 million to Firefly Pictures, and this is the total account of the 20% copyright revenue of James Wan's studio. James Wan will also take $34.19 million from this movie, and after deducting production expenses, the profit will be $27.69 million. Everyone says that Hollywood is industrialized, and the assembly line style profit making method is of course one of them, which ensures that the risk of Hollywood developing blockbusters is reduced. On this day, Lemon called his agent Johnson. In addition to instructing him to continue to win over Lauren Weisberg, he also asked him to urge the overseas revenue sharing. A hit movie is very profitable, but usually within 1 to 2 years, the revenue sharing issue is a problem. Everyone likes to drag it out when getting money from the theaters. After all, with so much money in hand, the interest is a profit, and there is no need to share. And now, the worst thing about Firefly Pictures is cash flow. Not to mention debt, it also needs money to develop new projects. Therefore, during this period of time, he followed the management to deal with the revenue sharing issues everywhere and watch the profits return to the company. Take this income as an example. The offline model is a long-term revenue sharing model, which is generally delivered once every 1 or 2 months. When the income comes in, taxes must be paid. Because of the help of PricewaterhouseCoopers, various tax avoidance methods are used, but it is not as shameless as high-tech internet companies. It is about 10% of the total income, which is $8.45 million US. If there is no tax avoidance, at least 37% of the profit must be handed over. Federal income tax is really high. There is no doubt that no one dares to blame the USIs. Of course, first of all, the overseas revenue sharing money is deposited into the account first. The domestic dividends are distributed to James Wan's studio, and another $10 million is paid to Gustav. Then, the box office sharing issue was dragged on for more than a week. In the end, Firefly Pictures only recovered $41.55 million, plus the second offline account has not been recovered, and its profit is at least around $20 million. And what they got was that all debts were paid off. A relief. 2 days later, that is, on October 27th, the company began to prepare for the project The Devil Wears Prada. Later, in the adaptation, Lauren really didn't want outsiders to intervene, and made the image of the magazine editor a little more positive. A woman who is well known in the fashion circle can't tolerate her subordinates. Is this funny? It is related to the logic of script creation and the IQ of the characters, and even the quality of the plot of the movie. Lyman directly left Lauren aside, and let the editorial department borrow a shell to remake a more reasonable workplace story. Although the contract states that Lauren can participate in the screenwriting, it does not mean that Firefly Pictures cannot adapt the film. Participation and decision making are two different things. Soon, Lauren found out that she had been deceived. Fox, Firefly, they are all the same. It was a pity that she was fooled again after being perfunctorily treated the first time. But it was useless to make a fuss. Although Lauren was deceived, she was not stupid. How could a fool use a Mary Sue novel to disgust her boss? Moreover, the whole text was full of allusions, and no one named anyone, but readers knew that it was written about Anna Wintour. The most important thing is that Anna wanted the court to intervene, but it was impossible because the novel was fictional. Of course, adaptations usually do not satisfy the author himself. For example, the author of Forrest Gump publicly scolded the producer, saying that it was a blind change, but it did not prevent the movie from becoming a classic. In other words, the act of adaptation itself is a kind of recreation, which contains different personal thoughts. Just like Lauren likes to belittle her boss, Lyman wants to turn this character into a career woman, and the settings are completely different. As a movie targeting the female market, the original version of Prada is very good. The various styles of the heroine Anne Hathaway even became popular that year. It is sought after by all kinds of girls. This movie also focuses on the atmosphere of the fashion circle, rather than any plot. The story is very simple, and can be roughly summarized as the ugly duckling becomes a white swan. In the end, the heroine resigned, and became a white swan in her heart. In short, the characters are beautiful and the outfits are fashionable, so this movie is a preliminary success. Although simple, it is not very easy. There are not many directors in the industry who can shoot women, and Lyman himself does not plan to shoot this work. It is not interesting, and he is not interested. Chapter 566 Market Analysis, Subscriptions, Vote. If Lyman were to analyze the reason why Prada became a hit in the past life. First, it caught the rise of feminism. Female audiences have become a force that cannot be underestimated in the film industry. In other words, female audiences have more independent consumption power. Second, it accurately caught the fashion circle as a content carrier. Female audiences' hobbies are definitely different from those of male audiences, and the topic of fashion wherein the desire to peek into the fashion circle obviously hit the climax of female audiences. Why? Through Prada, they can take a glimpse of the high-end and mysterious fashion circle behind the scenes, peek into the private life of fashion celebrity Anna Wintour, and follow the protagonist Andy to get various luxury brands for free, thus becoming dazzling. This sense of satisfaction for female audiences is the source of the film's box office success. In the meeting room of Firefly, a group of people are discussing the project Prada. Lemon cleared his throat and said, "Let the screenwriter department talk about their opinions first. Nano, you go first." Nano joined the company last year. He is a British man in his 30s, and is usually Jonathan's deputy. Now, Jonathan is busy writing The Prestige with his brother, so naturally, he has the highest seniority in the screenwriting department. There are too many branch lines in the novel, too many unnecessary characters, and it is not easy to focus and unify the scenes. We need to make a choice in direction. If we follow the fashion topic set at the beginning, creating a luxurious workplace environment style will be easy to stand out. Also, the climax of this script is not well coordinated, the context is old-fashioned, and the theme is superficial. It needs further embellishment. Seeing that the screenwriting department completely understood his ideas, Lemon smiled with satisfaction. "Nano, this is your job. I believe the final script will be revised, right?" Nano smiled and said, "Of course. In fact, Prada is also a famous Hollywood film project. That is a small-scale film project with a big investment. Now that Firefly Pictures has taken over, of course, such an opportunity cannot be wasted. Blake, what do you think?" Lemon asked Blake Cole, who was designated as the executive producer of this project. The old man from Rodrian has already shown his understanding of the film market, and he can often complete the task of supervision well. The story structure should be simple, removing the soap bubbles in the heroine's life, and focusing on the topic of fashion. That should be enough to capture the female market. Yeah. Lemon nodded and looked at Glenn from the market analysis department. "You can also talk about it. Analyze the budget and investment of the film. This project can't take the route of rushing for awards, so everything is based on passing the standard." Glenn said carefully, "Moviegoers don't care about the language of the camera, nor do they care about the innovation of narrative methods. As long as the picture is beautiful enough, the actors are not too bad, and they can tell the story clearly, everything else is that simple." So, what about the budget standard? 30 million to 35 million. Prada doesn't have many outdoor scenes, nor does it need frequent transitions. There are not many group scenes, but it needs excellent actors who can hold the stage. Because the story is not exciting enough, it can only rely on the actors to attract the audience to watch. According to the script, the heroine must be beautiful enough. In addition to her beautiful appearance, she must be famous and have a fan base. It is difficult to negotiate such a candidate without a salary of 10 million. This is not an Oscar-winning movie, and no one is willing to lower their status. What about the candidate? Of course, the bigger the better, and the actor's salary can account for half of the production cost. Glenn said, "Using a well-known enough actress can attract a lot of popularity and publicity will be much easier." "Well, how about Miss Eva?" Lemon shook his head. "She's not suitable. Her style is different." Then, Jessica Alba, Keira Knightley, Charlize Theron, or even Kate Winslet. Glenn continued to propose candidates. Not good. These people either just had a big hit movie and are in the rising stage of their career, or they became famous early on. They will not stick to the mere salary. They will definitely ask for a share of the box office. Such a price is not affordable for a Mary Sue movie. It was the project producer Blake who refuted again. Glenn was silent for a while. The salary of popular actors will not be low, especially this movie is so commercial. Unless. Just when the discussion was deadlocked, and a group of people were thinking, Lemon suggested, "How about Anne Hathaway?" Of course, to be on the safe side, invite Jessica and Charlize as well. The performance of the original Anne was amazing enough, and Lemon subconsciously did not want to change the candidate. At this time, Anne had stepped into the independent literary and artistic circle, and she was not very popular, and there was almost no news about her. Of course, after leaving Disney, Anne's career is indeed declining. After Lemon spoke, everyone also thought about the feasibility of Anne Hathaway as the heroine. First of all, there is no doubt about her beauty and temperament. The Princess Diaries series really made Anne a princess. At that time, she was also called a Disney princess. Then there is the pay. The pressure on the production of the project will not be great. After all, as long as they do not directly participate in the box office share, everyone thinks it is okay. Then, the direction of discussion is the director. After Lyman made it clear that he would not take it, the management was helpless with this boss and genius director, and the several people who cooperated with him were not in this direction. His personal style is strong, but he can't play a simple commercial movie without spiritual core. Perhaps Nolan and James Wan can try, but one already has a favorite work, and the other has just finished Dead Silence. After a few months of busy work, he is preparing to take a holiday and rest. He can't recruit more people. Moreover, James Wan seems to have never filmed a woman, let alone a beautiful woman. You know, how to make a woman beautiful is also a skill. Among them, the group thought hard and finally had a few goals. One is Gary Marshall, whose representative works include Pretty Woman, Runaway Bride and The Princess Diaries. His works directly made the big-mouthed Beauty Roberts a first-line actress, and also brought out the newcomer Anne Hathaway. His ability to shoot women is beyond doubt. The other is Giuseppe Tornatore, whose representative works include The Beautiful Legend of Sicily, The Legend of 1900 and Cinema Paradiso. He is best at camera and story. However, he does not like external works, and is likely to refuse. As expected, neither of them agreed. The latter returned the invitation intact, while the former is old and his desire to create is not strong. What he wants most every day is to spend time with his family. After all, he debuted in the 1950s, and is now 70 years old. Moreover, he is not a tough cowboy like Clint Eastwood who wants to die on the set. He will almost stop directing in the next few years. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 567 Anne Hathaway. Subscribe, vote. The director's issue was eventually shelved. Lyman vaguely remembered that the original version seemed to be shot by a TV director, but he forgot the name. After all, there are so many practitioners in Hollywood, and those who are slightly famous are not easy to remember. The marketing department can only continue to screen, and there is only one requirement: to be good at shooting women. As for the female lead, Lyman and Anne Hathaway had met once, on the set of Brokeback Mountain. Although they were still not very familiar with each other, Anne was also an artist under CAA. As long as they were invited by CAA, it would be very easy. After the script was sent over, Anne certainly did not refuse. Then, they met again. It was at CAA's Death Star building. Brian Lord accompanied him personally, and Anne looked even more beautiful after being carefully dressed up. A brown-red plaid shirt, with a coat on the outside, in this October day, showing snow-white calves, red lips, and a soft face. At first glance, she is indeed the type of silly and sweet princess in the Disney style. Of course, she is not silly, it's just a metaphor. With blonde hair draped over her shoulders, her pupils are sparkling. In any case, this is a woman who can live well with the beauty given by God. The essence of this world is of course to look at appearance, isn't it? Even in Hollywood, where there are so many beauties, Anne's appearance is enough. We meet again, Anne. Lyman greeted with a smile. Hello, Mr. Last. Anne was a little reserved, but the slightly upturned corners of her mouth showed her happiness. After a few days of separation, she has become a big shot, and the senior partner of CAA also wants to accompany her. Anne's agent Bush Reisman, who came in with her, noticed Lyman's admiring look and quickly took the initiative to find a topic to break the silence. He smiled and said, Mr. Last, Anne and I have studied the script of Prada very carefully. Anne is very happy to play the role of Andy. In this regard, don't worry, there is more than one candidate for the female lead. We have also invited Jessica and Cherries. Lyman spoke first to exert pressure, and then continued, I came here today, just for a preliminary audition. Bush said awkwardly, so, didn't pass? He originally thought that she had a great chance of winning, but when she met Jessica, who had just become popular through Sin City and Cherries, a beautiful South African, and did not have much advantage. Appearance is not a decisive factor when everyone reaches a certain level. Annie has a good image, Lemon affirmed, after being praised, and smiled politely. It's very standard. It seems that she has practiced a lot, and even the upward dark can be kept perfect. So, what is your salary standard? Lemon asked directly. Before this, Bush had discussed this with Anne. They agreed that the pay could be lower, but they must ask for a share of the box office revenue, because everyone knows that the film projects produced by Firefly are very likely to be a big hit. However, this request is exactly what Lemon cannot accept. He rejected it directly. Bush still wanted to argue and tell about Anne's past achievements. But Brian Lord on the side frowned, gave his family a warning look, and then half-jokingly said, Lemon, if this movie is not successful, Anne will suffer a great loss. This statement almost denied Anne's value, which made Anne look a little unhappy, but facing the real power boss of CAA, it was difficult to say much. But in the eyes of people like Brian, 100 Annes are not as valuable as one Lemon. After all, star actors can be promoted with resources, but a director, especially a powerful director, cannot be easily recruited or created. Moreover, CAA has relied on Lemon in recent years, and has gained a lot of roles and profits. First-tier actors are important, but second-tier and third-tier actors and newcomers also need opportunities, and opportunities come from film and television projects. Of course, there is no need to explain all these little thoughts in detail. Moreover, Anne Hathaway does not have much bargaining power. In the past 2 years, she has only performed in literary and artistic works, and has not achieved much. Bush was warned, and could only take the initiative to give in. Mr. Last, how about $9.5 million US? Sorry, I think it's a reasonable price for the first offer, after deducting the box office share. $7 million. 3 years ago, Anne's net worth was this much. Moreover, this is the female lead with the most scenes, and there are no big name male actors. You overlooked a fact. Lemon shook his head and said, it is precisely because this is a female lead drama, that it is a truly worthwhile opportunity for an actor like Anne. If it is a male lead drama, how much room will there be for performance? Who will the audience's attention be given to? Even if she is a vase, she is the absolute focus of the film. Do you understand? Bush was embarrassed by what he said. How could he not see that this is an opportunity for the actress? But the problem is, the net worth. Not only is it not going up, but it is also going down. But in any case, it has to be fought for. After reading the script, Anne also attaches great importance to this work. It should be said that it is important to be a real female lead instead of a female lead who sets off the male lead in general. These are definitely two concepts. Let's not talk about the amount of scenes. Such themes themselves are rare in Hollywood. At this moment, feeling Lemon's dominance, Bush glanced at Brian and found that he seemed to be getting up. He whispered a few words to Anne not very secretly and then followed Brian out. It's a stalemate. Let them talk on their own. Lemon watched the two people leave with a smile and looked at Anne who was sitting upright opposite him again. Relax, this is just a contact, and the choice of the heroine will not be decided immediately. How could Firefly Pictures take such a huge risk for a project with a production budget of nearly $35 million? In fact, every studio is doing its best to reduce the production risk. The only difference is whether it is worth it. But obviously, Anne's offer made Lemon not worth it, or it was not equal. In Lemon's view, Anne needed such an opportunity to perform more than him. After all, Charlize Theron would definitely be suitable without her. As for Jessica, she was just a bargaining chip to make up the number, to put some pressure on the competition for the heroine. Because her image is not suitable for playing a newcomer in the workplace like Andy. Anne noticed this change in attitude and felt a little disappointed. She felt that she had thought too much and had overestimated herself, but soon she regained her composure. If you don't even have this mentality, you won't be able to survive in Hollywood, which is full of rejections and setbacks. If you get rejected once, you will feel unbalanced. Then how can you live? No one is irreplaceable. Chapter 568. Subscribe, vote. The conversation was not going well. For a female star, status and value are tied together. Therefore, Anne Hathaway was a little hesitant. For Lemon, the current cash flow of Firefly Pictures is quite unstable. It is a period of pain. It is naturally a good thing to reduce investment at the end of the stalemate, and remembered the words of her agent when she left, and a blush flashed across her face. Looking at the big director opposite, she thought about it and said tactfully, "Mr. Last, maybe we can have lunch together later, and then discuss this matter in detail." Lemon frowned. "I have to go back to the company at noon. So, sorry, Miss Anne." Since she decided to use the beauty trap, and did not hesitate, "What about in the evening? Or tomorrow is fine, I'm free." Lemon suddenly understood, smiled at the corner of his mouth, looked at Anne lightly and said, "But I'm very busy, maybe I don't have time to waste." Anne's eyes darkened, and she once again had an inexplicable regret for her appearance. "However, if you can get opportunities just by your face, is there any room for other mediocrities in Hollywood to survive? Not to mention that this is a big project involving 30 million. Which actress can be worth 30 million just by her face? Her body is not worth it either." Her eyes suddenly became resentful. But Lemon didn't care. He said, "For the last time, this time we are here to discuss the audition. You passed the first round. If you fully understand the role and can reach the final state, there is still hope. Of course, if we can reach an agreement on the salary, the chance will be even greater." After that, Lemon left. He went to meet Brian Lord. Lemon had a good impression of the CAA boss. When Brian saw him like this, he knew that the matter was not successful. He hesitated slightly and gave another reason to refuse the high salary. In the past few years, Anne has not been smooth sailing from the business field to the literary and artistic field. Lemon smiled. "Prada is a good project, especially suitable for an actor like her. I will persuade her." CAA's first responsibility is to protect the interests of its clients, but sometimes the status of clients is not equal. Moreover, CAA's resources rarely tilt downward, otherwise Anne would not have gradually become out of films to shoot in the past 2 years. On October 30th, although the script was still under further revision, the movie Prada had been officially approved within the industry, with a budget of 30 to 35 million. At the same time, Firefly Pictures also sent out role invitations to major brokerage companies. Other supporting roles and extras need to be screened, and Lemon handed this power to casting assistant Glenn and executive producer Blake, who helped with the audition. At night, Beverly Hills. Eva watched with interest as Lemon put a disc into the DVD player. This was a movie he wanted to watch on a whim. Perhaps it was not a whim, but after listening to some of Brian's words, Lemon wanted to know what works Anne had performed in the literary and artistic circles. After all, except for Brokeback Mountain, which was quite successful and gave Lemon some memory, and seemed to have disappeared from Hollywood for 2 years. The Robbery of Alice that is being screened now is a work that Anne starred in March this year. Because the theater performance was very poor, it entered the offline market early. Art films, poor box office is normal, but this one has no news at all, which is very strange. But halfway through, Lemon understood why this film is not famous. The story is about the gang world in Los Angeles. Logically, there is a lot of room for exploration of this subject. Fighting, vendetta or human nature, whether it is Martin or Lemon, many directors have gained fame and fortune in gangster movies. But the director of this film, Barbara Catton, puts the perspective on 2 beautiful girls, which is very novel and unique. She does not follow the crowd. She is indeed a non-mainstream art director. One of the heroines is Alyssa, played by Anne. In order to find excitement, she hangs out with gangsters, but accidentally enters the largest local gang, and is spotted by a big boss. Under the rough visual effects of the movie, Anne Hathaway also contributed her professional debut on the screen nude scenes. Logically, such a great sacrifice should have a certain impact, but asterisk is not naked, or the nakedness is not straightforward enough, so there can only be some concerns. You should know that Sharon Stone became famous after stripping in Basic Instinct. Nicole also contributed nude scenes in Eyes Wide Shut, which was popular for a while, but Anne has always been focusing on the pure character, so she can't strip. But in order to break the limitations of her acting career, she can only try bravely. But obviously, stripping or not is not a tangle, because the movie is really boring and dull, and there is no depth of thinking and no resonance. Those who play art don't play art, or the directing method and rhythm control are a bit poor. There is a literary style in the bones, and the director's choice cannot be said to be bad, but this is a failed work. After watching it, Lemon asked, "What do you think of this movie?" Eva was confused at the time, and after hearing this, her evaluation was very pertinent. The plot is a bit dragged out, the main line is not clear enough, the character portrayal is too shallow, and the supporting roles are given too many roles. If it focuses on the mental changes of the two heroines and more ink is used to describe the Los Angeles gangs, it should be good. But that's two stories. Lemon smiled. "Why did you watch this movie?" Eva asked in confusion. "I'm just curious. Please give us your evaluation of Anne Hathaway's performance. The story is not well told. No matter how the actors perform, it's wrong. Moreover, she is not relaxed enough. The emotions and the sex scene are not in place. Everything else is fine." Haha. Lemon found it interesting. When did his girlfriend become so sharp? Unexpectedly, Eva herself said, "After getting involved in the production business, I feel that my perspective on problems is different. In the past, I might only care about whether the role has a lot of scenes, whether there is a lot of room for performance, and whether there is a desire and impulse to act. This is a good thing, and it is right. A movie is not just about roles and stories. It also has narrative methods, camera angles, and even overall coordination and harmony. Perhaps there are also emphasis, colors, light, and music." Eva smiled and interrupted with a smile. "If you keep talking like this, I will become a director. Isn't it good to be a director?" Lemon asked back. "Well," Eva thought seriously for a while and said, "I like acting. I studied acting, and I'm exposed to acting. I prefer being on stage, rather than behind the scenes." "Okay, you're right." Faced with a beauty who has such a strong desire to perform, what else can Lemon say but support her? Chapter 569 Brand, Subscriptions, Vote. Prada agreed to pay $10 million in sponsorship fees and provide clothing throughout the filming of the film. However, they put forward a condition that all the main characters in the film should wear Prada and other brands are prohibited from entering. Vogue magazine is willing to use the office building for real-life shooting, and the only requirement is at least 3 seconds of close-up publicity. Also, Ray-Ban sunglasses offer $1 million to buy out the image placement advertisement. Joseph took the marketing department to negotiate the sponsorship of the film project, and with the past performance of Firefly Pictures, there is no lack of favor from brands. Among them, Prada may be the happiest. How attractive will the publicity effect of a film that uses the same name luxury clothing as the actors' costumes be? This question seems to be a needless thought. Anyway, with the publicity expenses that Prada spends on brand image public relations every year, it is undoubtedly very willing to monopolize the main clothing sponsorship with only $10 million. And this is also the largest sponsorship fee for the entire project. What is a little surprising is that when the marketing department found Anna Wintour, the powerful woman in the fashion circle implied in the novel, she was willing to cooperate. Perhaps they couldn't stand someone eating from the inside and using privacy for profit, so the current Vogue magazine specially added an entry agreement. That is, after leaving the company, the relevant work content must not be disclosed. It goes without saying who it is targeting. Therefore, when Firefly Pictures clearly stated that it would change the character image and not adopt the character setting in the novel, Anna Wintour certainly intended to clear herself. Of course, it is an indisputable fact that urban workplace works are more likely to be favored by sponsors. And if all these sponsorship terms are finalized, it also means that before the filming of the movie, Firefly Pictures has recovered more than $13 million investment budget. The jewelry is sponsored by Dyer, an old partner. In this era, similar methods of Hollywood movies are used by everyone, and it is nothing. After all, some works with higher investments have not been unseen by projects that rely on sponsorship to make a profit. Lemon wrote his opinions on the back of the advertising quotations one by one, then closed the folder and handed it to Joseph. "Okay, let's finalize the contract with them based on these terms." Joseph nodded, stood up and asked, "That's good. By the way, what do you think of the choice of director? David Frankel?" This was the name handed to Lemon after screening. "Well, He filmed a TV series called Sex and the City in 1998, which was the most successful series on HBO that year. Both its narrative style and aesthetic tendencies contain an element of fashion culture. Joseph had obviously inquired about the director and introduced him in detail. He also participated in Band of Brothers and served as a screenwriter for several other projects. The only thing that worries people is the movies he directed. Whether it was his debut film Rhapsody of Love or Dear Diary filmed again 2 years later, the box office was not good. However, his professional qualifications are definitely no problem. Lyman thought for a while and said, "It seems that this director David Frankel really fits the filming style of the film and is a good candidate. Okay, I will refer to his works and talk to him about his creative ideas. If there is no problem, he will be chosen. Boss, there is one more thing." Joseph asked again. "There are 2 important female supporting actors. Why don't you check them out?" After 2 rounds of auditions, the relevant information has arrived. Any questions? As for our boss Merida, we prefer Meryl Streep, but after she received the invitation, she wanted to talk to you about the script. Okay, I'll make time to meet you. Meryl is just like that. After she won the Oscar for Best Actress for Kramer vs. Kramer, she no longer concealed her insistence on film selection, so she basically would not easily agree to act. After solving some problems in the preparation process of the project, Lyman returned to the office, and soon, David Frankel came. The 40-year-old director with black-framed glasses was a little anxious. After all, for a director who has gradually come to the fore after honing on the set, he always wants to prove himself with movies, not TV series. Therefore, after he succeeds in a TV series, he will try the water of movies, then return to the TV circle, and then find a way to get out of the circle. Then, he waited for the invitation of the Prada project. To be honest, he was very happy to accept it. At least, this project has a larger shooting budget than his past few works. And the amount of budget means shooting space, better scenery, better behind the scenes team, and better co-actors. This is what he needs. After some politeness, Lyman handed the final version of the script to David, and then quietly waited for him to finish reading it. Of course, the script of Prada is not complicated, and the character context is very clear. It only took the other party about 20 minutes to understand the direction of the whole plot. David knew it was time for him to show himself. This is actually an interview, and he needs to try his best to show his adaptability to this project and his own advantages. Mr. Last, this movie is a somewhat novel work that focuses on female characters. Let me say that, as long as you firmly grasp the rich fertile soil of the workplace topic, and match it with dazzling fashion outerwear, showing the unique charm of new age working women is enough to catch the audience's attention, not to mention the addition of various luxury brands, which adds a lot of color. What else? Lyman was unmoved, or rather, this is what the script has already shown, and what Lyman wants to know more is his deeper understanding. It's similar to the Sex and the City I filmed. It doesn't need any pretentious narrative techniques or elaborate conflicts. It's just a workplace life with universal significance, constantly sacrificing oneself, sacrificing competitors, and being sacrificed by one's superiors at any time. Most people compromise with work and survival, but the 2 protagonists of the movie finally choose not to compromise. This is what makes this movie different from life. Life is just life, but movies need highlights. What about you now? Are you willing to compromise? Lyman smiled. He thought the man in front of him was very interesting. David Frankel said seriously, "I'm making movies and living life, so I'm always compromising. I think you'll be the director of this project. How about a salary of $3 million plus 3% of the North American box office?" Of course. Mr. Last, thank you very much for handing me such a project. I promise I won't let you down. Seeing David's unconcealed happiness, Lyman also smiled. Chapter 570 Meryl, Subscriptions, Votes. After David Frankel signed a director contract with Firefly Pictures, the Prada project could finally move forward quickly. The casting has also confirmed some of the supporting roles. For example, Emily Blunt and Stanley Tucci, who were very good in the original version, and the models who walked the catwalk in the film. Although they had few roles, they also received cooperation from Victoria's Secret and invited Gisele Bündchen, Heidi Klum and others to increase the beauty of the film. In addition to these, and CAA supporting package service, the remaining small roles that have not yet been selected are still hot. After all, being able to star in a movie is already a luxury for many actors who have not yet made their mark, even if it is just a supporting role among supporting roles. Therefore, there is a lot of work to do every day in terms of auditions. What's even more outrageous is that the movie needs a pair of twin children, and then received hundreds of resume applications, and many people outside the circle rushed to participate with their children. It has to be said that Hollywood is very attractive. This is already the place where overnight fame occurs most frequently, and it is a faithful portrayal of the American dream. The competition among child stars is no less than that among actors of other levels. For a time, Firefly Pictures may have become a kindergarten. There are more and more candidates from Australia, Britain, and France. Of course, this is something that director David needs to worry about. Sometimes, auditions are also very torturous. Although you can enjoy the power to select actors and make a decision with your word, it is inevitable to be exhausted to sit behind the audition table and ask questions repeatedly. Especially child actors are one of the most uncontrollable factors in Hollywood. If there is a problem during the filming, you dare not scold or beat them. Threats are useless. They will also attract the surveillance of children's organizations. It can be said that the decision must be made carefully. You must not pick a pair of shy characters. It is more troublesome to be unable to let go. They will cry when looking at the camera. In short, the disturbance is overwhelming. However, these small roles do not need Lemon to check, and David can be responsible for them all. What he needs to do now is to talk to Meryl Streep and listen to her ideas. If she does not agree to play the role, he must continue to audition for the role immediately. Prada seems to be easy to shoot, but it does not mean that the actors' performances are easy to pass. Generally speaking, in the workplace, Miranda is the boss who is high above, and her image and temperament must meet the standards. Otherwise the growth of Andy, a newcomer in the workplace, cannot be highlighted. And this role has a lot of scenes, and the character setting standard is a powerful actress in her 50s with a strong aura, and who can suppress the template of a strong woman. According to this standard, Meryl, an Oscar nailhouse, undoubtedly meets the requirements. Meryl was born in 1949 and graduated from Yale University. When she learned about the Prada project, she was not very excited because she had a good eye for selecting films and could see at a glance that this story did not have much potential for exploration and naturally would not be favored by the jury of various awards. But because of her recent free schedule and the project affirmed by Lyman, a rapidly rising director, she hesitated to contact the management of Firefly Pictures, hoping to have a face-to-face chat. This morning, in the reception room of Firefly Pictures, Lyman officially met Meryl for the first time. As one of the most experienced actresses in Hollywood, although Meryl has entered middle age, she is still popular because she does not rely on her face to make a living. And unlike most famous actresses, once they pass the golden age, they quickly disappear from the circle. However, although the Oscars appreciate her performance and have won numerous awards, Meryl's salary is still not high. Just like many classic screen images created by the other party, Meryl is very confident and calm, and always gives people a more comfortable feeling when talking. After a few simple chats, Meryl also asked directly about the movie Prada. Lemon, I have read the script carefully, but I don't know what this role can bring me. Attention. In the eyes of movie fans and audiences, you have a different style. This can continue a certain kind of freshness from passers-by and make your acting career better. After a little consideration, Lemon said, Prada is not a work with deep thinking, but its advantage is that there are no important male characters to steal the show, so you can give full play to your role. Freshness? Meryl was puzzled. Yes, it's difficult for the new generation of audiences to notice you. Have you noticed? There's an age gap. Sorry, that's not what I meant. It's okay. People will get old anyway. Meryl continued, you mean the character of Miranda can create a sense of familiarity in the eyes of the new generation of audiences? Well, that's popularity. Okay, I understand. Following Lyman's analysis, Meryl seemed to feel that this work could help her acting career, but out of caution, she finally asked, "Do you think the audience will be very interested in such a movie? That's the director's business. I just want to say that this movie is designed to capture the female market, so the main characters are all women, and the topics revolving around fashion clothing that women are interested in, as well as some workplace setbacks that many people will encounter. Miranda is a perfectionist, thoughtful, harsh, intimidatingly demanding workaholic, the queen of fashion. She's very different and challenging, isn't she?" Meryl had read the script, so she naturally knew what kind of role she was going to play. From here, it seems that this type of image creation is something she has never performed before. She has played many tough female images, but it is really the first time for her to be the editor-in-chief of a famous magazine at the forefront of fashion. Not to mention, although Meryl's achievements in awards are extremely high, the box office of the works she has participated in can only be said to be mediocre. Losses are common, and there is no box office that has exceeded 200 million. In Hollywood, where capital is everywhere, commercial performance is truly related to the acting quotation. Meryl Streep's current salary is obviously not much, and is definitely lower than that of the heroine. But she has acting skills, and can add a lot of color to the conflict of the film's scenes. Such a powerful actor joining Prada must be something that Lyman is very happy about. This is also the reason why he is willing to meet and talk. Now, seeing that Meryl was persuaded, Lyman also struck while the iron was hot and said, "Miss Streep, if you can participate, the whole crew is very welcome, and Firefly Pictures is willing to pay a salary of $5.5 million US. $5.5 million. This is a very generous condition. After all, Meryl herself sometimes needs to make cameo appearances for free. In Hollywood, at the same level, male actors are a level higher than female actors, and their commercial traffic is also a level higher than those who are not very popular." Chapter 571 Confirmation. Subscription. Votes required. As November came, the heroine of Prada was finally decided. It was Anne Hathaway, with a salary of $7 million, and no profit sharing. I don't know whether it was the credit of CAA, or she figured it out herself. After all, if she just starred in niche art films, and didn't win any awards, it wouldn't help her acting career much. While David Frankel was still busy preparing the crew, The Lake Monster also entered the promotion period. The film is scheduled to be released in mid-November, just in time for the warm-up period of the Christmas season. As for why it was not chosen later, but directly involved in the Christmas season, to gain the largest audience base, the competition pressure this year is a bit high, and it is inevitable that both sides will suffer. You know, the works released after the new year include Peter Jackson's remake of King Kong after the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Disney's magical masterpiece The Magic Kingdom of Narnia, and Warner's ace sequel Harry Potter 4, The Goblet of Fire. None of these three are weak. Although Lyman is very confident about his movie and thinks that the box office will not be bad, it is also a way to avoid direct confrontation and discuss making money. They are not mortal enemies, and Lyman and Peter Jackson are still in contact occasionally, so there is really no need. Moreover, when it comes to pleasing audiences and fans, the disadvantages of gathering together are definitely greater than the advantages. Not to mention, Warner is still responsible for the distribution of The Lake Monster, and it can't compete with Harry Potter for the release date. Lyman had thought about it a long time ago, before deciding on the release time, so he began to arrange the main creators of the crew to cooperate with the last wave of publicity, and then waited to enter the theaters. At the same time, on November 4th, Disney's animated film Chicken Story was released. This movie, which took 3 years and cost $60 million US, simply uses an anthropomorphic animal world to create a worried little chicken. It will worry that the sky will fall down because of a little disturbance, so it will overreact. It has to be said that, although Disney Animation has passed its peak and has been beaten back and forth by DreamWorks Animation, Blue Sky Animation and Pixar Animation in terms of performance, the foundation is still there. The production quality of Chicken Story is quite good and is deeply loved by children. Therefore, in the first 3 days of screening, a young age work has accumulated $40.04 million box office in North America, directly landing at the top of the weekly box office chart. It is a good start for the battle for the schedule at the end of the year. While praising, the media exclaimed that Disney's sword is still sharp and Disney Animation can continue to fight for another 10 years. Little do they know that Disney lost the crown in the field of animated films due to multiple reasons, not because the enemy is too strong. The reason is, firstly, the production cycle. Animated films usually take 3 or 4 years to complete, and most of the expenses during this period are on the salaries of painting talents. Secondly, it is the progress of the times. Disney's traditional hand painting has been abandoned, and computer 3D drawing like Clevo, DreamWorks, and Pixar has been adopted. Thirdly, the management is determined to transform Disney and vigorously support the output of live-action films, deliberately ignoring its own animation industry. In addition, Disney Animation has another drawback. There are too many free-range hand-painted employees. It is time to lay off employees. Otherwise, unless the creative ability of the 1990s is returned, and another Lion King can be made, it will still be a burden. Moreover, even if Disney's management is willing to change and embrace new technologies, those hand-painted employees will not agree. In the United States, large-scale layoffs will definitely attract obstruction from the union. Disney is simply unable to resist the torrent of technological replacement. On November 9th, just 1 week after the release of Chicken Story, when the North American theaters were fighting, and there was no live-action movie that could hold the fort, the Lake Monster held its premiere as scheduled. Earlier, in Warner's preview, the cinema executives were unanimously optimistic about the film. Considering the box office data of commercial films, the chain cinema operators headed by Emperor Entertainment Group directly arranged more than 2,800 screens for the opening of the Lake Monster, with a 30% screening schedule. This is already a priority level of support, especially in a popular time period. The Lake Monster naturally cannot dominate it alone. The only film that may be affected during the same period is the music biographical film Walk the Line starring Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon, and this film has only more than 1,300 screens, which is a level lower than the Lake Monster in all aspects. In the mansion in Beverly Hills, Lemon changed into a formal suit and watched Eva carefully tie his tie for him. "It's okay," Eva said with satisfaction. With the help of his agent, Matthew McConaughey has been participating in various auditions recently, and even prepared for absurd comedies that he would never have taken a look at before. Unfortunately, the result disappointed him. Perhaps it was out of scruples, or maybe it was superstition, that failure would bring bad luck. In short, after so many days, he still hadn't received any acting opportunities, not even a supporting role. Similarly, it also made Matthew see a reality clearly. It is the norm in Hollywood to take advantage of the high and step on the low. It is not a personal charm at all. Those who used to flatter him were mocked and ridiculed. They were all face-changing monsters. After countless setbacks, Matthew gave up the days of continuing to participate in auditions and being rejected, and patiently waited for the opportunity that Lemon said, that is, after the movie is released, he can rely on his performance to recover his career decline. After the movie is scheduled, maybe he is the one who is expected. His career is at a low point, and his girlfriend has broken up. Matthew just wants to take advantage of the movie's release to change to a comfortable environment. When Lemon got off the car, there was already a sea of people in front of the open space of the Chinese Grand Theater, and the air infected by a large number of fans became anxious. They shouted, they were excited, holding high posters of the movie in their hands, or giving a warm response to every big star who came to support them. Although Lemon is a director, he cannot keep a low profile because of the famous Eva standing next to him. In fact, he has accumulated a lot of die-hard fans through his works. Of course, behind the scenes and in front of the stage are still not comparable. People may appreciate Spielberg's talent or go to the theater to support Cameron, but will they chase directors like chasing star actors? This is obviously impossible. The good impression and the heart and the expression are two different things. Therefore, it is not surprising that only Eva's name can be heard in the heat wave caused by Lemon and Eva's appearance together. From her debut to now, Eva has walked steadily and has no black material. In the eyes of the public, she has a feeling of being a perfect lover. Of course, it would be more perfect if there was no man standing next to her. Chapter 572 NV. Subscribe, vote. Faintly, Lemon heard someone scolding him. But Lemon didn't mind the fans' extreme reaction at all. After all, the emotion of envy turning into jealousy and then turning into hatred is itself a kind of loss of composure. And is it necessary to pay attention to the words of a hateful person? No, it's not necessary. Lemon didn't think about being a public idol, but wanted to make some achievements in his favorite directing career. Does it matter whether he scolds or not? Soon, Lemon and Eva disappeared at the corner at the end of the red carpet. In the waiting area, many people had gathered at this time. After explaining to the main creators of the crew, Matthew also saw Lemon. Seeing that he was surrounded by people, all kinds of courtesy continued, and there was some yearning in his eyes. The not so good experience in recent times has made Matthew understand many things more deeply. If he hadn't fallen into a big fall in the Sahara Soldier project, he wouldn't have been looking for opportunities everywhere. In the past, the scripts were directly delivered to him. Perhaps, careful film selection is what he needs to pay most attention to in the future. Matthew thought so. Several people walked into the screening room. Not far away, Gyro and Alfonso Cuarón also arrived. After serving as the producer of Pan's Labyrinth, Gyro hinted from time to time that he would join Firefly Pictures. However, Warner treated him very well, and the treatment was beyond reproach. However, Alfonso was somewhat touched by the trust that Lemon invested in Pan's Labyrinth without saying anything, and the great selection space for co-directors. Warner is good, but it will not respect the director so much. In fact, they respect the marketability of box office hits. Moreover, Gyro has known him for a long time, and it is inevitable that some ideas will arise after such encouragement. Although he has not yet agreed, it is also a good behavior to attend the premiere of Lemon's new work. After the interactive session on the stage, the movie was officially screened. Matthew, wearing a baseball cap and a jacket, appeared on the screen, unloading, loading, and then transporting, taking a break when tired, and eating at a fast food restaurant on the roadside when hungry. Looks like an ordinary laborer. But Matthew's life was quite pleasant. He had family and friends. They would gather together happily at night, drink, watch TV, brag and chat. Ordinary people also had ordinary happiness. Occasionally, he would quarrel and get angry because of his rebellious younger brother, which was probably a small wave in life. Until one sunny day, he drove a truck along the lake road as usual. A certain black shadow passed by his sight, a huge black shadow, and then quickly disappeared on the water. He stopped the car and stared at the lake for a while, but nothing appeared again. But this scene was still remembered in his mind. After delivering the goods and returning home, the neighbor next door yelled angrily, saying that several pipelines upstream of Lake Michigan violated regulations and discharged a light green sewage, and asked Matthew to march in protest. This kind of thing is very common for residents like them who live not far from Lake Michigan. In the past few years, there have always been factories that do not comply with regulations. Matthew followed, but the chemical plants were unmoved. Soon, a scene that shocked the audience appeared. It turned out that, after protesting didn't work, Matthew collected evidence and wanted the government to close the chemical plant. The information was then handed over to the bosses of several chemical plants. He then went to the media to disclose it, but it was blocked and suppressed again and again. Everyone knows about the sewage discharge regulations, but those who benefit from it don't have to bear the bad environment after the water body deteriorates. Sacrificing some ordinary people can get a lot of tax revenue, and the state government legislators must be willing to do so. The camera began to switch back and forth between the wealthy class and the working people represented by Matthew. The former enjoyed themselves and suppressed all the unfavorable news with a phone call. The latter continued to protest and even clashed with the security team of the chemical plant and went to the hospital. Through the portrayal of several scenes, the audience's position and emotions were quickly replaced by the story. They were angry at the collusion between officials and businessmen, lamented the injustice of society, and might also think of some situations they had experienced. After all, similar things are happening all the time in this free land. What Harvard admissions scandal, what police shooting case, the audience has long been aware of similar wealth contradictions. In the United States, money is more useful than power. Even when one's wealth reaches a certain level, one can directly act as a referee. For a while, there was some commotion in the theater, and some viewers were angry. But the movie did not continue to reveal to the audience whether the efforts of Matthew and others were still in vain. When the only fairly just lawyer took over the lawsuit, the scene turned to a large lawn. It was a sunny day. Matthew and his family had a picnic after work and walked out of the house to relax and breathe. There were many people on the lawn with the same idea. Everyone played outdoor games, laughed and had fun, and it was very lively. Then, the water monster that pointed out the theme appeared. The water monster had fins, sharp teeth, frog-like webbed feet, a black and grey body, huge eyes that turned around, and wrinkled eye bags like a chameleon. As soon as it appeared, the scene was immediately chaotic. Some people called for help, some cried, some ran away, some were frightened, and some were stunned. Suddenly facing danger, many people lost their thinking and acted on instinct. But the water monster is not ambiguous. Every time it jumps, it can take 1 or 2 lives. Damn, the water monster is really fierce. It's over. The protagonist's sister is being targeted. Go and save her. It's like a tiger rushing into the sheepfold. Its huge body, coupled with good burst and mobility, can't escape as long as it is targeted by the water monster. Fresh lives are slaughtered in front of you. The protagonist's powerlessness further highlights the cruelty of the water monster. This realistic and wonderful visual effect brings a strong sense of shock to the audience. The surging adrenaline makes the audience open their eyes wide and don't want to leave the big screen for a moment. The passionate violin concerto sounded, and the entire lawn was empty, leaving only traces of the water monster passing by and garbage scattered everywhere. Good special effects will bring people a completely different viewing experience. Plot flaws and content deficiencies are nothing for a special effects movie, not to mention that the lake monster has already mastered the characters and rhythm very well. Therefore, this kind of spiritual refreshment makes people not want to miss it and continues to firmly attract everyone's attention. As a commercial movie, the first climax section obviously held up the scene at once. Literary drama combined with special effects has also become the mainstream in Hollywood. With more and more entertainment methods today, movies are also improving. Chapter 573. The main plot is clear. Please subscribe and vote. The story is still moving forward, and there is almost no room for verbosity. After the little sister was eaten by the monster, Matthew and others became silent. In the small house, the atmosphere solidified like oil, and even the second brother who always liked to contradict stopped talking. Suddenly, the phone rang harshly. It was the little sister who called back. She was trapped in a dirty sewer, which seemed to be the lair of the water monster. Matthew's father said that he must rescue the little sister, which was naturally the idea of Matthew and others. But how to act? It seems that there is no good idea. On the other hand, the state government also received news that the inexplicable monster came ashore and slaughtered. But in order to prevent the situation from escalating and causing panic among other people, or to worry about their official positions and being exposed for the indiscriminate discharge of chemical plants, they naturally chose to conceal it from the higher-ups. Obviously, compared with their own political careers, politicians never worry that the water monster will not be solved. What they are afraid of is that something else will be exposed in the process of solving it. So, on the one hand, they gathered the survivors together, under the pretext that they were afraid that the water monster might carry a virus. On the other hand, they sent troops to blockade and sweep along the huge Lake Michigan. The politicians' confidence was in sharp contrast to the urgency of Matthew and others. But the water monster's whereabouts were uncertain, the lake was deep, and it was easy to get ashore from other places, and the safety of residents was still threatened. This time, the state government was anxious. Within the blockade, the lawyer who had originally received Matthew's lawsuit task also found something wrong. After an investigation, Matthew and others were found trapped in a courtyard. After knowing the truth of the matter, they bribed the gatekeeper to release the protagonist team. Matthew was trapped for 3 days, and he became more and more anxious about his younger sister's safety, so he planned to bring a shotgun and confront the water monster head on. Then, it was the carelessness of the second brother who gave his father a shotgun without ammunition, which killed him. This section is actually a bit funny. Before he died, the old man smiled bitterly, as if he was saying how unlucky he was, which also made the audience smile in the tense and exciting plot. The rhythm is also a rhythm. Afterwards, the protagonists continued to track the water monster. The government's obstruction and incompetence, and the protagonist's bravery, all caused strong emotional reactions from the audience. Until the last battle, Matthew and others took the modified flamethrower and finally severely damaged the water monster, which was also quite enjoyable to watch. Then, the water monster attacked fiercely, endured the pain and counterattacked, directly knocked the second brother against the wall, and slowly fell down. The audience who had just watched it very happily suddenly became quiet again. They were stunned by this sudden death again. Perhaps some old fans have become accustomed to Lyman's unconventional play. In his movies, there has never been any theory of the immortality of the protagonist. Everyone is flesh and blood, and of course they face death at any time. Moreover, it has to be admitted that the character creation of others is very three-dimensional, even if some sense of excitement is sacrificed for this. The movie was still going on. Matthew finally picked up a methane tank and some gasoline, which caused a more intense flame. The water monster was still burned alive. The little sister was rescued, but she was not so happy. But those who survived still have to face life. The movie was over. When the last line of subtitles rose, the lights in the screening room came on again. In Matthew's somewhat nervous expectation, the audience did not hesitate to applaud. It was a kind of recognition and support. It was not until Lyman took the main creators to the stage that the applause slowly stopped. The fans were still emotional, but they left in an orderly manner. However, the sound of discussing the plot among each other never stopped. It can be seen that the screening effect is indeed good. How do you feel? Gyro asked Alfonso. Alfonso nodded and exclaimed, I didn't expect that he would still show mature methods in such a subject. The audience was very satisfied with the show, and Alfonso was very impressed after watching it. You know, commercial movies are not that easy to make. Even if the structure is conservative, not everyone can play it. In fact, he himself can't play such a smooth narrative, with almost no room for verbosity. He can also firmly grasp the main line, while explaining clearly what each character is doing in the whole plot, giving the protagonist a sense of existence. The two walked out of the cinema in silence. Alfonso was still thinking about the details of the rhythm change points of the movie, so he admired Lyman more and more. Although this subject matter is not to his taste, for a special effects work, it is rare to use environmental issues to trigger a series of developments. Although it is just a taste, it does not dig deep into the cooperation between the government and the chemical plant, and control the media suppression. But it is undeniable that the film is a certain literary drama that allows the audience to think about this kind of social conflict. It is not comprehensive and simple, brainless, and piled up big scenes. This is really good for a commercial movie, especially the control of the rhythm of the film. The first half leads to the conflict, and the second half focuses on fighting the water monster. The government and the protagonists advance on two fronts, supplemented by several small climaxes. The setting is appropriate, and the tension is moderate. It constantly guides the audience's emotional release. Finally, at the decisive battle, when it reaches a peak, it quickly falls. It can be said that there is always an undeniable attraction hidden in the excitement. Gyro also said, sometimes, Lyman's style is very strong, and sometimes, it is mature like a movie shooting template. In this aspect, I think it is the most powerful. When they came to the parking place side by side, Gyro was still explaining. As they talked, the topic of the chat came to the direction of winning over. It's not that Gyro is working for Lyman, so he wants to expand the company's influence. He is just cooperating with Firefly Pictures, and Firefly can't control the stay or departure of any partner. In fact, the agency specializes in this kind of thing. However, Gyro felt comfortable working with Lemon, and he was grateful for the Pan's Labyrinth project. Not every studio is willing to invest in a high-risk work, and it is a foreign language film that is destined to not please the English market. Therefore, he felt that we were friends, and it was necessary to find a more comfortable studio for his friend, which was obviously kind. Facing Gyro's various explanations of the benefits of joining Firefly, Alfonso's heart seemed to be more and more moved. Gyro continued, "You know, I shot a movie called Hellboy before, and Firefly gave me more than 15 million in profits. Lemon likes to let the project director also invest and participate in the profit sharing. Although doing so will make him lose money, if he loses money, but if he makes a profit, he will not be stingy in distributing the harvest. I actually like this. I don't have to argue with other studios for a little profit. Firefly is more straightforward. I like to cooperate with straightforward people. Is it okay for the first cooperation project?" Alfonso replied, "Of course, as long as it's your own project. If it's a company-sponsored project looking for a director, it seems that there is no investment share, but you can participate in the box office share." Gyro continued to answer, "Seriously, you should come over too. Lemon is not a stingy person. You are better than me. If you make money, you can definitely shoot the subject you want to shoot." "Really?" Alfonso spit out a meaningless question. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 574 First Day Evaluation, Subscriptions, Votes. Director Lemon's new film, The Lake Monster, held a grand premiere at the China Grand Theatre last night. This commercial film about a monster disaster made a box office of 5.6 million yuan at midnight on its debut. The wonderful visual effects, the tight rhythm control, the climax of the scene arrangement, and the occasional humorous dialogues all revolve around a clear storyline, turning the viewing process into an emotional outburst that makes you exclaim. As long as you focus on it, you can reap a feast of watching. From the warm opening to the tragic ending, the plot is full of tension, especially Matthew's wonderful performance in it. He slowly tells the story of a character who is brave and hesitant enough to make the audience feel safe, which also leaves a deep impression. I'm looking forward to Matthew's performance in other movies in the future. The next morning, accompanied by the rustling sound of paper flipping, Lemon sat at the dining table and flipped through the colorful newspapers that had just been baked today, and Eva brought a simple breakfast to the table. The reviews in the newspapers, except for some stubborn film critics who still find faults and think that this movie is too commercial and a popcorn work, are mostly positive. The Hollywood Reporter directly said, after the release of The Lake Monster, there will definitely be a wave of movie watching in the next few weeks, because it is so mature. Whether it is visual, auditory or rhythm control, it can satisfy the viewing experience, stimulate the secretion of dopamine, and make people feel spiritually happy. This is a genre masterpiece that the mainstream public will like. Bella also wrote in a column in the Chicago Times, "It starts with the warmth of a family and ends with the tragedy of a family. It seems to be a small pattern and not grand enough, but it has established a family performance that can justify the arrival of the monster. This structure is quite full and has a strong sense of substitution. In fact, what I appreciate most about this film is not the hot scenes and realistic water monsters, but these subtle details. There is no doubt that The Lake Monster is a wonderful mature genre movie with a good viewing experience. Hollywood variety of course, there are criticisms when there are affirmations. No work can satisfy everyone. The San Francisco Evening Post clearly stated that the story of the film was weak, many places were not dug deep, and the plot was fragmented. In the newspaper, it was regretted that a talented director had become secular and assimilated by the strong industrial atmosphere of Hollywood. He only used visual effects and bombardment scenes to attract the audience, but forgot to play the plot in depth. This tit-for-tat and clear-cut argument can be said to be a unique scene among Hollywood critics, because they are often inconsistent internally. thanks to the fact that there were no big movies on the shelves in mid-November, and no one was competing head-on with the Lake Monster. Under Warner's strong public relations and publicity, most passers-by fans focused their attention on this movie, especially the good box office results of the midnight show, which gave a lot of persuasiveness. It has also become a complete focus in the media's continued hot comments and the online audience's praise, including IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes and other online review sites. They also announced the review data of the Lake Monster as soon as possible. Just like the characteristics of commercial movies, that is, they can earn enough box office, but they can't earn good evaluation scores. Among them, IMDb only got 7.5 points in the preliminary ratings of more than 1,200 people, and Rotten Tomatoes, where professional film critics gather, has even fewer. Although the freshness is directly pulled to the maximum, the score is only 7.2. However, it is always above the passing line, and people are not completely blindly criticizing without thinking. But the power of commercial popcorn movies has always been to satisfy the audience, and Lyman has always had a clear understanding of this. The dividing line between commercial directors and artistic directors is so vague and so clear. Since Hollywood embraced capital, this line has become even more intangible. For most movie fans and audiences, they don't care about whether it is commercial or not, whether it is artistic or not. It is good if it can satisfy you, is worth the ticket price, and meets spiritual needs. But this goes back to the original origin of the movie, how to tell a fictional story. What postmodernism, what double lines, what narrative methods are not important, what is commercial, what is artistic, and the atmosphere of the film is important. Michael Bay, who is most often criticized by film critics, is already a first-line director. No matter how you tease or complain about the explosion scenes that are always present in his movies, and even the film rating has never been above 8, the lowest score is not even the passing line, but his works always break 100 million in North America, break 200 million, and will break 1.1 billion worldwide in the future. The most intuitive way to measure the success of a movie should also be the audience's attitude, which is converted into data, that is the box office performance. A movie with a high box office may not be very good, but it will definitely not be bad. November 10th is also the day when the movie is released in North America. If someone can investigate from all over the United States, they will find that at this time, the theaters with posters of the Lake Monster are often lined up to buy tickets, and the more prosperous the theaters are, the greater this phenomenon occurs. The theater managers keep reporting to the headquarters, requesting to expand the halls and dispatch copies. After the headquarters summarizes the information, they immediately start to add more theaters for screening, and notify Warner and Firefly to cooperate. Warner's people are still constantly hyping up the momentum, creating a greater influence, thereby attracting more passers-by audiences. This is a kind of harmonious cycle, and it is also the most significant cycle of a hit movie. After last night's not so excellent, but definitely not bad midnight show, when the sun rose, after watching the movie, word of mouth or online, and reasonable guidance, the Lake Monster easily became a hit in November, and was sought after by audiences and fans. It is not difficult to fill the theater, but it is difficult to fail to meet the attendance rate, especially when the most die-hard fans want to see it on the first day of the release, and there is no shortage of audience base. In other words, disaster movies are either not well made, or they will be a hit, if they are well made. Whether it is The Day After Tomorrow, Independence Day, or Jaws, these examples all show how easy it is for the audience to accept such works. Just like the original Han River Host became the first movie in the Korean film history list with a small budget, and it has been maintained for 6 or 7 years, breaking the number of moviegoers, and setting a new record. And Lemon's version is not only more in line with the local atmosphere of Hollywood, the original version has the flavor of Hollywood assembly line, the plot is richer, the budget is bigger, and the various scenery, special effects, and picture levels are more than one level higher than the original. Why wouldn't it be a hit? Chapter 575 29.87 million. Please subscribe, vote. Last's Mansion in Beverly Hills. In the study, the clock moved slowly and firmly, and finally stopped at the number 1. Before 10 minutes had passed, Lyman, who was sitting in front of the computer, received an email from Lyman on time. This was a summary of the data from the theaters. After roughly scanning the distribution cities, screening time, and average attendance data, he scrolled to the real-time box office statistics at the bottom, and Lyman felt relieved. 29.87 million, an average attendance of 82%, and an average box office of more than 11,000 per show. Lyman went to bed with satisfaction. Although he had directed many movies, he would still feel nervous after the movie was released, but now he could have a good dream. But this night, many people were destined to be unable to sleep. Lyman was so happy that he didn't sleep. He discussed the next topic, hype, with Warner's publicity department all night. Some industry insiders didn't sleep. They needed to know the first day results of the lake monster as a reference target. Many media people in the morning newspapers didn't sleep either. After the results were released, they had to rush to write the news for the next day. But the first day box office of 29.87 million still surprised many people. Although 29.87 million did not break any box office records, it also occupies a place in the entire long history of film, ranking in the top 5 in the first day box office data. Star Wars 3, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Spider-Man 2, the fourth is The Lake Monster, and the fifth is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Looking at the above movies, you will soon find that these are works that book fans and movie fans are easy to gather to watch. Therefore, although the total box office of The Lord of the Rings 3 is very high, the first day box office is not as good, because the cohesion of hardcore fans is not as good as the Harry Potter and Star Wars series. This kind of youth market is like a traffic star, which rises quickly and falls quickly. As for why The Lake Monster can have such a high first day box office, perhaps it is because of the blessing of the right time, place, and people. The timing is naturally good. In November, except for Chicken Story, which is quite strong, the box office of many movies is not high. Chicken Story is an animated film, and the audience overlap is not high. Sing Along among the live-action movies is more in-depth, and the main target group is still not overlapping. The location is Warner's strong publicity and the optimism of theater chains. As early as the internal preview, it was unanimously believed that the performance of the film would not be low, so more than 2,800 theaters were arranged. The people are the passerby foundation laid by Lyman's many works and the market capacity of disaster films themselves. Take Jaws in 1975, which took more than $470 million with a budget of $9 million. For example, if inflation is calculated, it is definitely one of the top few in film history. In addition, The Day After Tomorrow, which dominated the summer season in 2004, also had a box office of $24.3 million on the first day. At that time, the competitors were even more fierce. Of course, Warner was also surprised. They expected The Lake Monster to perform well, but they didn't expect it to be so good. But the film industry is full of unexpected events. If you can always predict the future accurately, there will be no big loss projects. My colleagues in the film industry are somewhat envious of the data they have collected. Fame and wealth can be obtained with just one hit work. Mads Mikkelsen became famous. A Danish actor plays a righteous lawyer. I don't know if he will take on the TV series of Hannibal with this image. However, he can be good or evil, and has a strong plasticity. Paul Bettany, who was originally a low-ranking actor, also jumped up, and his salary doubled. As for Matthew McConaughey, who had fallen to the bottom, he naturally returned to the peak of his career. However, his mood was the most complicated. Because he had lost it before, he seemed to cherish it very much after getting it again. The specific manifestation was that after the initial screening of The Agent, he was also very cautious and did not dare to agree easily. On the second day of the movie's release, Lyman received a call from Gyro, saying that he was invited to dinner. But when he walked into the private room, Gyro's attitude was very enthusiastic, which made Lyman feel strange. This enthusiasm is too much. Is there a problem with the project? Do you want to increase the budget? Lyman took the initiative to ask. If so, the source of the enthusiasm is clear. After all, not every director is like Cameron, who refuses to give in when the budget for a film is not enough and forces the investors to jump into the sea. Filming is not always smooth sailing. As long as it is not too much, Lemon is willing to pay more. However, it was unexpected that Gyro was not doing this for Pan's Labyrinth. The film was still selecting locations and the progress was very slow. Gyro also spent a lot of thought on it and did not want to be too casual. Keep improving. Before the food came, Gyro first congratulated Lyman. Congratulations on the box office success of The Lake Monster. Lyman waved his hand. It's not certain yet. It's only the second day. The attendance rate and the first day's performance are both excellent. It can't be bad. Okay, is there anything you want to say? This is not like your style. Lemon teased. Gyro is a straightforward person, otherwise he would not have stopped cooperating with New Line Cinema after some disagreements over the investment of Hellboy. After this question was asked, Gyro did not continue to say any polite words. He directly stated that he wanted to introduce a director to see if it would work, that is, to be affiliated with the studio. Okay, this is asking for help. No wonder his attitude is so enthusiastic. You know, this guy was not so enthusiastic when he took Pan's Labyrinth to find Lemon for investment. Lemon heard this, but did not agree immediately, but asked Gyro who wanted to come to Firefly Pictures. Gyro replied that it was a good friend of his from the same place, Alfonso Cuarón. After attending the premiere of The Lake Monster that day, I saw that he had this intention, so I asked for him. As for whether to ask or not, of course it was a polite remark. Gyro couldn't just say that he was afraid that Firefly would not give any good conditions, so it would be better to let his friend continue to work with Warner. But Lemon knew that Alfonso's directing ability was excellent. If he wanted to join Firefly, he would be welcomed and would definitely not be rejected. After all, among the three Mexican masters, Alfonso's style was the most comprehensive, and he would also compromise with the market. He was a director similar to James Wan. You know, this guy shot Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which was the second highest rated in the entire series. The sequel to Deathly Hallows was rated sentimental. After all, it was the final chapter, and it was the best received one by media film reviews and fans of the original novel. Of course, because it was too faithful to the novel, the color tone and theme were dark, and it was not as bright as previous works, resulting in the lowest box office. But this was not a problem for Lemon. What Firefly lacked now was talent. Therefore, Lemon nodded decisively and agreed, and asked Gyro to contact as soon as possible. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.